Obviously I pull my blow on Lynn, not wanting to hurt her or myself. I'm not moving as fast as I can, I'm not stabbing as directly at a vital as I might otherwise. Yet when my mom flashes me a contemptuous grin and easily steps to the side, I start to wonder if I'm about to once again get a lesson on arrogance. Even with the way my soul's core grows much denser than a human's does, I have significantly surpassed the size of my mother's soul. Lynn is powerful, extremely powerful by most metrics, really, but I suspect if I really put my back into it I could rip her from her flesh with only minimal trouble. That is the skill I am best at, the skill that I use most often, and my most devastating offensive capability. As I make another lunge, which Lynn sidesteps by barely an inch without seeming the slightest bit worried, I can't help but be a little tempted to use that power. I don't, of course. This is about landing a hit on her, and she is trying to prove that I can't. I'm not interested in just sitting back and letting someone walk over me. I have recently reached the next stage in what I sort of think of as my life cycle, considering that the first step was hatching from a soul egg. I am a bit proud of my advancement, happy I finally get to stop using my hideous, inefficient muscles for everything. I want to prove my superiority. I want to beat her. To my annoyance, however, it is clear that Lynn is very, very good at dodging. So obvious, she taunts stepping around another stab and punching me just under the ribs. I barely feel it and try to grab her with my free hand only to watch her leap out of the way again, cackling all the while. Damn it. I should be stronger than her. It doesn't help that I have much less practice using a knife than I do with using my spear. Lynn doesn't even feel that fast, it's just that she seems to always be barely fast enough to avoid whatever it is I'm doing. I could maybe surprise her by suddenly using my full speed, but of course then I would have to go see Penelope to get my body unbroken again. Plus, I think there's another secret here. Despite how much I care for her, Lynn and I don't exactly talk a lot and I don't even know what exactly her talent is. Or, as I'm starting to suspect, what her talents are. The longer we fight the more I'm sure she has two separate ones. One of them she keeps on a constant low purr, ramping it slightly up in power every time I lunge for her. I don't know what it is, other than clearly not being offensive. The other just turns on and off, and I'm pretty sure that's her speed talent. Whenever she makes a little burst of movement, that one flares. The problem is that, even though I know this in advance, I don't have any idea what to do about it. She's using both talents at once, which Capita never did, and both of them seem to be useful in a brawl. She's not trying to stab me, despite the knife in her hand. If anything, she's using it as a handicap, giving her one less arm to punch with. But I am still getting my butt kicked. You're trying to teach me that no matter how strong I am, I lose to someone whose talent is specific to the current situation, I deduce. No, trying to teach you that you are slow as shit and I'm better than you, Lynn answers immediately. Rowan facepalms, and I try to stab my mother again. Lynn laughs, dancing around me. Our fight is indoors, and the room is not very large, yet she always seems to have exactly as much space as she needs. Can I box her in somehow? Get her into a corner. I start directing my thrusts, encouraging her to dodge closer and closer to the edge of the room. The moment I think she's cornered, though, she just vaults over me, sticking her tongue out at me as I track her through the air. Quit trying to fight me like I'm a monster. Lynn says. You know I have a brain too, right? I'm not going to move without a plan. She dashes in for the first time and I jump back in surprise. Now all of a sudden, I'm the one cornered. It looks like she's going to punch me in the face, but she feints and brings up the knife instead, the blade barely kissing against the skin of my neck without drawing blood. Dead, she tells me, bursting backwards before I can stab her back. Does that count? I ask, grinding my teeth. Because if so. I burst forward again, lunging for another stab at bringing my tentacles into the mix as well. To my surprise, Lynn seems to notice and jump backwards, but I press the attack and soon the only place she can dodge within the small room is inside my range. She avoids 5 of the 8 tentacles I try to grab her with, but 3 wrap around her and squeeze lightly. Dead, I hiss back. I'm surprised you dodged any. Lynn shudders, pawing at her belly as if trying to rub some warmth into it as I let her go. Danger sense, remember? I can't see any of what you do, but if I listen to my instincts I can feel something is coming at me. So. Point in your favor, I'll grant you. But you still haven't touched me. I scowl, tossing my knife to the side and flexing my fingers. Fine, I growl, right before feeling the snap in my right leg as I lunge at Lynn as fast as I can. I'm not a knife fighter, as much as I should probably learn to use them a bit since I have them as a backup weapon. But ultimately, if I am going full power, I would rather not accidentally kill my mother with a blade. Her eyes go wide for an instant as I close the distance far faster than I have up to this point, but her surprise is not quite enough for me to capitalize on. I swipe at her, miss, then break my other leg, performing an instant change in direction. Penelope won't be happy, but she'll deal with it. I wrap the brakes with tentacles as a makeshift splint, bearing down on her again and very, very nearly catching her. She was surprised at my speed before but isn't now, bumping up the power in her own talent to compensate. That's fine by me. She's not moving at levels beyond my perception, and I don't need to keep up with her perfectly. I just need a particular kind of opening. If our family actually owned anything, everything in this room would have been destroyed by our engagement as we blast around, me always on the offensive. Rowan has been functionally forced out, he and many of the kids peeking hesitant pairs of eyeballs around the doorframe, trying to avoid becoming collateral damage. There's one more reason I dropped my knife, and I'm just waiting for Lynn to give me the chance to take advantage of it. She's right. She's not a beast, and I need to treat her as someone thinking a few steps ahead. If I can't dismantle her soul, I will dismantle her plan instead. What's politics like? I had once asked Penelope. Our team had been walking through the forest silently for a few hours, the monsters either fleeing in fear from me or dying instantly whenever they tried to engage. I was thoroughly bored and feeling safe enough to start a conversation. Penelope turned to me slowly, her languid glare and pattering soul indicating she was still a bit miffed about me telling the whole team that she had a crush on me. Still, she deigned to answer. Hydrock dropped an estimated 10,000 or so eggs on us, she said, which sounded like a complete non sequitur, but this was Penelope, so I knew she was going somewhere with this. The drops were all in groups, yes. About 50 to a couple hundred eggs per group. According to reports, our best guess as to what happens the moment those eggs start to hatch is that every single one of the newborn Vrothizo immediately tries to kill and eat all of the other ones. As soon as I finished reading that I thought to myself, damn. And here I've been trying to go to the forest to avoid politics. I blinked in confusion, but Nora immediately busted out laughing. Along with Mateo, of all people, though his hissy monster laugh seemed to kill the mood for everyone else. I don't get it, I said. I know, Penelope answered flatly. But despite the laughter, I do not at all mean it as a joke. Politics is about seeing how much aggressive cannibalism you can get away with in your path to power. Figuratively, I mean. While I would not be terribly surprised to learn of a noble engaging in literal cannibalism, I do not personally know of any. That's good. I hedged. Penelope sighed. Yes, Vita, the fact that our government does not openly engage in literal cannibalism is good. Anyway, on the subject of specifically Valka politics, I would have to describe the 3 major factions as the Royalists, the Church, and everyone else, really. Let's call them the mercantile faction, although they are we are, I suppose, but if anyone asks, I'm a Royalist, they are only a faction insofar as being united by a common hatred of the other 2 and a general desire to leech specific powers from each of them. For example, the Church de facto controls the entire metal trade due to the religious significance of metal. Because it is the duty of the Templars to prevent a perception event, and perception events can be caused by an overabundance of metal in a single place, the Church has decided they therefore possess a divine mandate to control every single gram of metal on the market and micromanage who is allowed to buy any given amount of it. And if this sounds like an open power grab more so than an actual devotion to a deity, that's because it very certainly is. And yet somehow the audacious bastards actually get away with it. Nora scowled, but didn't respond. But you're asking about politics in general, aren't you? Penelope continued. The crux of the metaphor is thus, political power is finite. To acquire it, you must necessarily take it from others. The more people with power, the less power everyone has. It is possible to increase the maximum available quantity of political power, but to do so you have to actually contribute to society, and that tends to be rather more difficult than simply eating your rivals. Fortunately, or unfortunately depending on your proclivities, rather than soul-rending teeth politicians fight with schemes. To defeat a rival and claim their power, you must understand what they want, how they intend to get what they want, and how to make their methods of gaining what they want destroy them rather than help them. Considering the degree to which Vrothizo are single-mindedly obsessed with constantly eating every living thing they come across, I imagine the pleasure they get from the act of consumption may very nearly be comparable with that a politician gets from twisting a former rival into a pawn by correctly anticipating and manipulating their actions with indirect levers that cannot possibly be traced back to their original source. I blinked. Any chance you could maybe repeat all that but exclusively using words that a homeless street kid could understand? Penelope smiled a little. If you and someone else both want the same chunk of bread, Vita, true victory is not found in taking it from them, but in learning how to make them give it to you. She quickly glanced over at our trio of revenants. Generally without using animancy. My fight with Lynn continues, my attacks getting more and more reckless as I push to get my hands on her. Going barehanded against someone with a knife tends to be a poor decision, but Lynn has been completely refusing to cut me, leaving her as the one with the handicap. At least until suddenly and without warning, this changes. I'm not stupid. I'll admit that I usually don't understand people very well, but a large part of that is me not putting any effort into it. Well, I shouldn't say that. It's hard to put effort into it, harder than it is to put effort into most things, and I feel very little desire to try, even if I know it would be helpful. But I'm still clever, I can still read emotions, and I'm still a trained con woman. Lynn makes a jab towards my hand with her knife in order to force me to abandon the attack, and I barely avoid grinning in triumph. My recklessness is real, but it's calculated. I want her to think I'm taking advantage of the fact that she won't attack with her knife, but what I actually want is for her to commit to a defense with her knife so I can capitalize on it in a way I know she won't expect. I don't abandon my attack, doubling down and letting her blade impale my palm. From there I grab the hand holding the knife in my own, and it's over. She tries to squirm and escape, but while she may be faster than me I am much, much stronger. Despite the difference in size I force her to the ground. There, I hiss in triumph. Fooled you. Got you. I win. Lynn, breathing hard, glances at my hand before back up to my grinning face. That you did, she admits coolly. Was it worth it? I blink in surprise, not entirely understanding the question. Was what worth it? Well, you beat me in a fight, Lynn says again, and she doesn't feel like she thinks she's lost at all. It took 10 minutes of your time, plus a hand, and therefore however much effort it will be to get that healed. Assuming you don't start to bleed out. I extract my hand from her knife, blocking off the blood vessels so my hand is barely stained red from the initial stab and nothing else. I flex my fingers. I'll be fine, I insist, declining to mention that I also broke both of my legs. So you'll be fine, Lynn says. But was it worth it? Did you really have to take this fight? I goaded you into this. You didn't want to, but it didn't take much pushing to change that. And what do you get out of this? The satisfaction of knowing you can beat up your mother? I scowl. So this was the lesson, I mumble. I thought you were trying to teach me to fight better. Lynn shrugs, getting up off the floor. Well, if I did that, that's great too. But what Rowan and I are really concerned about is more that you keep getting into fights in the first place. You've killed 13 people since Angelion, Han. That we know about. Have you thought about that at all? I know Rowan wants to give you the moral spiel, and I can't say I'm super happy about you using your talent that way, but I get that sometimes you gotta do what you gotta do. I've killed people on jobs before. I've hidden bodies, I've stabbed folks that probably don't deserve it. What I want to know is how much that's been eating you up inside, Vita. I want to know why you keep doing it. I want to know if it was worth it. I swallow, chewing a little on my lower lip. I didn't have a choice, I say quietly. Nora was going to forcibly take me into the church, or at least tell them about me. I would die, Mom. The Templars already tried to kill me once, they're just looking for an excuse. Lynn nods. What about the group that killed Angelion? A chill settles over the whole house, even the youngest of us icy with fury. Yes, I answer firmly. That was worth it. If anything, I should have killed them sooner. Lynn nods again. And the group with Capita, she asks. The whole fight with Capita, really? Was it worth it? I open my mouth and almost say yes, again, of course it was worth it. I had good reasons for what I was doing and the men I killed all pulled weapons on me. I just made a point of thinking about how I'm not stupid, however, so I think about it first instead. No, I conclude reluctantly. It all made sense at the time, but in retrospect I could have avoided the fight entirely. I nearly died fighting Capita and didn't actually get anything out of it other than a bit of information, which wasn't worth it. Lynn walks up close to me, patting me on top of the head. Okay. That's all I wanted to say, really. Don't forget why you became a hunter in the first place, kiddo. What? I became a hunter to eat monster souls and become strong. I'm not a kiddo, I insist again. Lynn smiles. Go back to your friend Penelope, she says. There's a hole in your hand, honey. I look down at my palm. Oh yeah. Nodding, I exit my home, lost in thought. Most of my life, the question of, is a fight worth it, has always been the same as, can I win this fight, the answer to which was almost always no, so every other aspect of a fight was obviously not worth it. I lacked power, so I could not fight. Now I have power, so I do fight. And in the forest, that's a strategy that works pretty well. Monsters need killing, and if we can kill them without being hurt we generally always should. But that's not at all how people work, is it? There are other ways to deal with people, none of which I'm good at, but it's also simply much more difficult to know if I can win the fight. Monsters are stupid, so power is everything. People are not stupid, so power is just one of many tricks in the toolbox that can be used to hurt me or the people I care about. I know this, I'm just bad at it. I have no experience thinking this way. I had been considering avoiding Penelope in order to try and minimize the awkwardness of whatever is going on there. That's not going to cut it though, is it? Between how often I get myself hurt and how much I need the help of someone that can actually think about this stuff with any competence, I kind of need her, don't I? The realization doesn't rankle as much as I thought it would, at least. I'm okay with relying on Penelope, even if she can be weird sometimes. I sigh, opening up our lab and heading downstairs. Time to get another rant on why I shouldn't be breaking my own legs, I guess. About a 10 day later, as I sit through the incredibly surreal experience of eating breakfast with my family, I'm mildly surprised to hear a knock on the door. Not in the sense that I don't see it coming, since of course I can feel a person approaching our house from anywhere within 1,000 yards and this is especially notable when that person happens to be Penelope, but in the sense that this is not at all the time Penelope normally drops by every day. Penelope likes to stick to a firm schedule, and usually waits until about 4 or 5 hours after the end of night to perform the daily biomancy treatments for everyone. Day more or less just broke, and we're all sitting around a table preparing to chow down on the food that we have stored in our house. Even Vitamin has a meal ready for her, although I'm the only one that can prepare it. Seriously. We have spare food. Inside the house. Something freaks us all out about that, it just feels wrong. Shouldn't we be eating it, if for no other reason than to prevent someone else from coming by and stealing it all? But no, we have a house now, not a shack. It's made of stone, and people can't just push the door down. Lynn and Rowan are usually home instead of usually not home, and can kick the ass of anyone stupid enough to try and rob them, but actually we can just legitimately expect to not be robbed, because everybody nearby is in the same situation. Hell, if something bad happens to us the guard might even actually help. Or at least Penelope says so, though we know better than to believe her. Come in. I shout at her, and she lets herself in with her key. What brings you around so early? Penelope smirks. Unlike usual, she's got some kind of satchel around one shoulder, a fancy, rich, expensively dyed accessory that I've never seen her with before. You have absolutely no idea what day it is today, do you? She asks. I frown, trying to remember which island passes over us next. Shattered stones? I answer. It's not so much an island as it is a collection of enormous boulders in the sky, but it blocks out the light when it passes over so it still counts. Correct. Penelope says happily. Which means it is also. All of us stare blankly for a moment before my little brother Yari chimes in. Actually spending time with them has done wonders for helping me remember their names. It's Weird Mask Day, he says. Oh yeah. Weird Mask Day. Once a year all the rich people put this crap on their faces, and a bunch of fancy stalls get set up and tons of people all crowd the streets and everything just becomes a smorgasbord for stealing. Weird Mask Day is a good day. Penelope chuckles, apparently thinking this is quite amusing. It's the Skyhope Festival, she corrects. The day celebrating the foundation of our city? Yeah, for sure, Lynn agrees. Weird Mask Day. None of you seem terribly excited, Penelope pouts with fake disappointment. We shrug. We aren't supposed to steal things anymore, since Penelope is providing us food and whatnot, so it doesn't really impact us much. It's kind of a rich people holiday, Basra dismisses. Well, Penelope says, opening up her satchel and pulling out a spread of animal and monster masks, how would you all like to be rich people for a day? Squeals of excitement erupt from around the table, and before I know it breakfast has been devoured, everyone is masked up, and the family plus Penelope are dashing excitedly down one of the city's main thoroughfares, being greeted by stall owners with pleasant smiles rather than the suspicious glares we're used to. The street is loud and busy, exactly the sort of ideal place for pickpocketing. Today, though, we are here to have fun, so some of the kids actually resist the urge to do so. Thanks again for doing this, Penelope, Lynn says from behind her smiling cat mask. Honestly, I've had no idea what to do with the kids lately. They're all used to being cooped up at home, but now that they aren't starving to death they seem to have all kinds of energy that they didn't before. Makes parenting a little harder. Funny how that works, Penelope answers dryly. She picked an intricate snake mask for herself, each scale delicately carved into the wood. I suppose I could always stop feeding them, if it's too much trouble. Well, I'll think about it, Lynn jokes. Seriously though. Thank you so much. You are pretty much the best thing that will ever happen to them. There's no way we can possibly repay you, you know. I don't need to see Penelope's face to know that she's smirking. Oh, I'm sure I'll find something for someone with your skills to do. Lynn laughs. Not so much of an altruist after all, huh, she asks. Am I not? I imagine you're dying to have some way to spend your time, Penelope responds coyly. Your boyfriend makes a better homebody than you do. Surely finding you some work is but another favor. That makes my mom laugh even harder, and she slaps me on the back. Vita, Catch this one while you can, I want to make sure she sticks around. Okay. I answer hesitantly, not quite sure I understand. Then a flash of embarrassment passes through Penelope, and I figure it out, causing the same to happen to me. I'll leave you two alone then, Lynn taunts, placing her hand on my head and rubbing around a little before running off. Katie. Honey, we pay for those now. With Rowan already off wrangling some of my other siblings and Vitamin staying close to him in case anyone gets suspicious of her, that does indeed leave Penelope and I alone. That used to be relaxing, but now it's just weird. What's with everybody pushing me into, well, whatever it is I'm being pushed into? I don't want to think about it. I like Penelope. I do. I just don't. So, how do you like your mask? Penelope asks quickly, interrupting my train of thought. I had it custom made. I reach up to feel the art strapped to my face. I hardly need her to tell me that she had it made especially for me, considering what it is. A great blue eye, wrapped up in tentacles so that it's barely peeking out from behind, shyly peering at the world with an abnormally piercing gaze. The tendrils are wrapped around each other as well, intertwined and swirling in complex, beautiful patterns. It's a depiction of my soul, obviously, and though the wood and dye are a pale imitation of the real thing, I can't deny that I love it. I love it a lot. It's good, I mumble. Thank you. Satisfaction fills her, both from my joy and from the usual smugness she feels from being right about something. It relaxes me a bit. It's not attraction, not really. She's just happy I'm happy, and I'm happy to be happy about that. Any of the stalls catch your interest? Penelope asks. Smell any food you want? Any games you want to try? Not picky about food, I answer, shrugging. You know that. I see a cup stall, over there. That might be worth a laugh. Penelope raises an eyebrow, and I lift an arm to point after briefly trying to indicate the direction with a tentacle. Unfortunately, it's not safe for Penelope to have the soul sight spell active in public. If a metamancer saw it and knew what they were looking at, we'd immediately be in trouble. Penelope can't use the metal tattoo strategy either, because she might actually be under some scrutiny, and the magic we use to block other people from detecting our magic is apparently also illegal, at least to have on an individual. We're only risking it on Vitamin because she's illegal anyway. That ball and cup game? Penelope asks. Sure, if you like. Why? Rowan used to run games like that all the time, I tell her. I helped out for a while before becoming a hunter. It's how our family used to get most of our money. Anyway, I know all the tricks, so it should be a fun and easy win. Well, I do like winning, Penelope agrees with a nod. Lead the way. We push through the crowd, a somewhat slow and frustrating endeavor for someone as short as I am. Honestly, it's kind of a miracle I can see any of the stalls behind the mass of celebrating people. At first, moving around was pretty stressful, not because everybody is huge and in my way, I'm used to that, but because every once in a while someone in my range nearby will randomly freak out as if they're under attack. That raises my hackles, and I have to try and figure out how much danger we're in before inevitably figuring out that they're scared of me. Everybody with a danger sense goes on high alert when I walk nearby, which is starting to get a little annoying. Thankfully, most people do not have one, so I should be fine. We get in the line for the cup stall, which thankfully isn't very long. It's much fancier than Rowan's ever was, though, with a big sign and a rack of prizes that you can win sitting behind the guy running the games. He's clearly a bit of a weasel, what with a murky, shifty soul that's slippery and hard to see through. I don't blame the guy, though. Sometimes you just have to make an honest living by cheating everyone else out of their money. The game is set up a little differently from Rowan's, the premise being that you could bet 3, 6, or 12 in a row, with the expectation that each game of cups would get progressively harder. If you get every single game that you bet correctly, you win a prize, with better quality more games in a row you got. Well, that's cute, Penelope says, pointing at one of the prizes. A stuffed little disciple. Perhaps Roscoe would like a friend? Roscoe is a loner, I answer matter-of-factly. He needs no friends, only hugs. But what is he supposed to get hugs from, if not a friend? Penelope counters. I hum, considering this. She makes a very valid point. Penelope truly is a master of rhetoric. 12 games please, I tell the stand owner, dropping the chitin coins for it on the counter. And someone takes the 12-game challenge, the stand owner announces loudly, trying to gather as much attention and spectacle as he can to try and draw in more customers. Could this little girl be the first person today to get 12 in a row? 15, I correct. He prompts, confused. I'm going to get 15 in a row, I tell him. Just to humiliate you for calling me little girl. Penelope gets a flush of excitement over that, causing me to regret it a little, but some things I refuse to stand for. The Cups guy grins a showman's grin, and we're off to the races. The first few games are pathetically easy, but of course that's part of how he gets customers. The more people watch the 12 set, the more people are going to think they can easily do 3 in a row, which will end up harder than they expected from watching me. Of course, even if they succeed, the amount of money they pay to play the game isn't worth the prize they get, so it's really a win-win for the guy. The speed he can move the cups around is legitimately impressive, and after the 5th game I wouldn't be surprised if many normal people would lose track of the ball even if he wasn't cheating. After the 8th game, of course, the cheating comes out and he secretly palms the ball before moving it into a new cup once or twice during the rotation. Obviously, I'm also cheating, having reached out with a tentacle and put a small soul shard in the ball, as well as the backup balls he occasionally replaces it with. Every round I point at the correct cup immediately, without even bothering to look his way, enjoying how increasingly flustered he becomes as a result. He starts using kinemancy after the 11th game, and considering how stressed he is about it I imagine he probably doesn't have a license. It's actually kind of interesting watching him do it with all 3 eyes, since my soul eye doesn't use light to see and is totally unaffected by the illusion, while my physical eyes see whatever his spell wants me to see. Thankfully, he doesn't use illusions to mask the end result, only to make it look like cups are spinning in places where they actually aren't, so I don't need to call him out on his cheating in order to win. He's smart enough to cut his losses. After all 15 games, I become the proud owner of a new tentacular stuffed animal, which I squeeze snugly while mentally promising to make it up to Roscoe with some double hugs. Your name is Jermaine, I tell my new friend, and then put him on my head as a hat. The little stuffed tentacles wrap around my scalp snugly and securely. Penelope says nothing, and I pointedly ignore her cacophony of embarrassing emotional reactions. Mostly because they are embarrassing for me, not for her, though I know in my heart of hearts I don't actually have a reason to be embarrassed. Stuffed animals, particularly Roscoe's, are the ideal companion and friend and I will not deign to pretend otherwise. When you hug a stuffed animal you get all the comfort of a proper cuddle without having to worry about getting touched in weird places or if the other person is sick or if they're about to put a knife in your back or if they're just trying to steal something from you. I do not at all like being put in a position of vulnerability, but with a stuffed animal I am always safe and in control. It is a welcome change from the constant, ever-present danger of normal life. Penelope and I continue to enjoy festival games, though neither of us find any of them very interesting unless we can use our abilities to handedly win, which is always quite entertaining. I also keep slurping down endless piles of sweet and fatty festival food, which Penelope refuses to stop buying for me and I find myself unable to protest against that attitude on principle. I definitely like food, and as long as I eat it slowly enough maybe I won't get full before I run out of it. Honestly, things are going really, really great. At least until we step into an alleyway to take a break from the crowds and a certain familiar soul suddenly pops into existence beside us. I jump back and draw my spear, glowering ineffectively at a pink-haired, fox-masked crazy lady who I can only assume has been waiting just outside my sensory range for precisely this opportunity. Hello again, friend. Capita says cheerfully, waving with excited energy. Can I celebrate with you too? Capita, I growl, spear still raised. What are you doing here? She doesn't feel hostile, but emotionally, Capita is one of the most complicated people I've ever tried to read. Something about being two fragments of a person spliced together makes it difficult for me to understand her as a singular entity, as her emotional responses are spread between two souls that demonstrate those responses in very different ways, not to mention the purple ooze between them which sort of acts like a third soul fragment and sort of doesn't. In short, Capita is just different from every other person I've ever met, to such a large degree that I will need to spend more time around her before I can pick up the skills necessary to understand what she's feeling. In the meantime, she's a wild card, and I don't trust her. Though in classic wild card fashion, she immediately does something absurd. Who? Capita asks. If you seek to get ahead, you'll find no such head here. I am the fox. I blink. Did she forget who she is again or something? No, wait, she called me a friend. And I did sort of promise to be her friend. Mostly because I was getting information out of her, but still. I might be able to just kill her as I am now. But then Sky would come after me for sure, and he would without question be coming for the kill. I'm not ready to fight Sky yet. So fighting here isn't worth it, I guess. I distinctly recall our agreement with your boss being that you would not bother us, Penelope says from behind me, her voice venomous. Does a friend bother a friend when saying hello? Capita giggles. I mean, a fox makes no agreements. I know not of this boss you speak, for I am just a wandering companion. I don't think she has her story straight, Penelope deadpans. What do you want? I ask. Listen. The work of art, I mean, life must listen. The fox has already told you her purpose, has she not? It is a day of celebration. What better time to make merry with friends? I sigh, putting my spear away. Sorry, I don't know a fox. But if you see my friend Capita, be sure to send her my way. She reacts with apparent shock, scrambling to fix her story. What a weirdo. I am, arguably maybe, if one were to look behind the mask, which may I say is against the spirit of this wonderful holiday, potentially perhaps possibly someone named Capita, she whimpers. And therefore, as per the terms of our non-aggression pact, you are supposed to leave us alone, Penelope repeats flatly. We were having a nice day. But. Capita retorts, I might also not be someone named Capita. Why aren't you with Sky? I ask her. Shouldn't you be spending the holiday with him? Isn't it normal to spend holidays with your lover, or something? Mild surprise and massive amounts of embarrassment erupt from Penelope at that. Why the heck? I don't get her sometimes. What about what I said would? Oh. I will also spend time today with Sky, Capita protests defensively. But is it not also a wonderful thing to? You can come with, I answer her. Capita absolutely lights up with joy, it's easy to feel even with how strange her soul is. It's also easy to see, because she starts hopping up and down and clapping her hands while making an excited screeching noise. Penelope steps next to me, lips pursed in frustration about the introduction of this third party. So it's as I thought. I make a quick decision, one that I hope I don't end up regretting later. I think we might want to introduce her to another friend of ours, I murmur to Penelope. That gets her back on track, picking up on my meaning immediately. Theodora. If Capita really is as friendly as she claims, we stand to gain a lot by having Theodora watch her use her talents. Teleportation magic is unfathomably rare, and Theodora's ability to rapidly convert any magic she sees into a usable spell is equally absurd. It's difficult to abuse considering that we can't allow most people to know Theodora exists, but since Capita is an animancer, she is unlikely to take offense at all of the animancy I've been doing. Speaking of, she is and continues to be our best link to cognomancy, and Theodora's ability to copy that could advance our research tremendously. This has been part of our goal from the start, the only difference being that originally I was going to bring in Capita as a revenant. Penelope nods back. So she thinks the risks are worth it. A living Capita that we can't know the loyalties of is a significant risk, but perhaps if we spend the day with her I can figure out her soul enough to know whether she's being upfront enough with her intentions. More importantly, this also turns today into a day about accomplishing goals rather than possibly having a date, which I am so much more comfortable with. Such a joy it is for the palate to have the art. Capita coos, spinning with dance-like movements between strangers in the crowd when we return to the street. My every smear evidence of a greater perfection. We make our way to the next game, where we are apparently supposed to throw discs at targets. The discs, naturally, seem to randomly wobble off course. Obviously the person behind the stall just has a weak kineticism talent, but he's subtle enough with it that people don't seem to notice. Unless those people are watching his soul use it, that is. Do you seriously think that I was made artificially, let alone by the same person as you? I grumble at Capita's sing-song musings. We are nothing alike. Why would the palette look like the masterpiece? Capita counters. Why would a sketch bear resemblance to a painting? The signature left on us is the same. That is all that matters. I scowl, paying the stall owner with Penelope's money in tossing a disc. As expected, it misses. I still don't like the implication that Capita and I are both created by some singular person. It feels insulting to be compared to her. Besides, if what you say is true, we're not really friends, are we? I wonder out loud. We would be more like sisters. I try to toss a second disc, but the stall owner doesn't even need to cheat as my throw is knocked wildly off course when Capita grabs me in a crushing hug, instantly sending my whole body into fight or flight. Danger. Danger, 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 danger. Sister. Capita squeals. Oh, yes, yes, yes. For the most beautiful of all paintings to accept a family of sketches, there could be no greater joy. Get off me. I shout, driving the base of my palm up into her chin hard enough to feel something crack in her face. She just keeps on giggling, though, giving me one final squeeze before I force her away. The commotion earns us quite a few stares from other people in and around the stall, but with her having let go I quickly calm myself back down. There is no danger, she's just weird. I return to throwing and soon the interest in us dissipates. Each disc wobbles in the air before moving realistically off course. It's a pretty good con, and I didn't expect myself to be annoyed by it, but I'm starting to get frustrated. When I have only 3 throws left, I poke a tendril into the body of the stall owner and tap his soul as I throw, causing him to jump in sudden terror and allowing me to get a hit on a target. I grin at him. That'll teach them. An exasperated and for some reason slightly curious Penelope grabs and sets Capita's jaw as I make my second to last throw, though to my frustration the stall owner has not learned his lesson and he knocks it off course again. Annoyed, I tap his soul a second time and, without really thinking about it, try to push a bunch of my mana into it. I fail at first, but now I'm kind of interested in seeing what happens so I push harder and force myself inside. It's odd. I can still move the mana around as if it was in me, although it's substantially more difficult. If I wanted to, I could probably damage or break his soul like this. Not that there would be any point. Pushing mana into his soul took a lot more work than just ripping it out would have, and I bet it would be comparably more difficult for anyone with a stronger soul as well. He places a hand over his sternum, surprised at the feeling but other than the tentacle touch not terribly disquieted by it. How odd. I throw my last disc and, still somehow not suspicious enough to just let me, the stall owner's soul activates his talent and starts shaping some mana. Specifically, he shapes my mana. It acts just like I've seen the Mistwatcher's mana act, except without the unruly, almost angry vibrations I've come to expect from someone channeling. He executes the talent normally, my mana gets consumed in the spell, which annoys me, but I don't do anything about it, and the disc is knocked off course as per usual. Interesting. There's even a little bit of my mana left over inside him, since the spell is all finesse and almost no power. The amount left over isn't enough for a second use of his talent, though. I didn't give him very much. He starts channeling mana to activate his talent for one of the other people throwing discs, doesn't have enough of mine, and so pulls in some of the mana from outside. A muffled screech sounds from inside his chest as the two kinds of mana collide and he collapses in pain. Whoops. Are you okay? I ask hesitantly. I really hadn't intended to do that. I hope he didn't get hurt. Experience begets wisdom, wisdom begets progress, she chirps, failing to hold back a few more giggles. Have you become wiser, littlest sister? I scowl. That had better not be a short joke. I'm 4'10" now. I don't know how tall I used to be, but I'm going to choose to believe that I'm growing. Capita. You're going to tell Sky pretty much everything we do today, right? I ask. She stiffens, with what I think is a mixture of surprise and embarrassment. I'm getting pretty good at figuring people out, so I'll probably crack her soon enough. No pun intended. Few secrets survive a lover's bed, she hesitantly admits. But so too does a family gossip at dinner. Penelope, I ask my friend, is there anything we care about Sky knowing? She thinks for a moment, then sighs. No, I suppose not. It's mutually assured destruction if he informs on us, considering how guilty he is of the same crimes. We may as well return now, if this vapid, pink-haired prat is going to ruin the holiday for us either way. Capita titters, hand over her mouth as she uses her other hand to pat the top of Penelope's head, which surprises the biomancer so thoroughly that I get to witness nearly a full second of her flailing to bat away Capita's arm before she primly steps around to the other side of me and starts plotting revenge like a proper noble instead. I grin behind my mask, because I know Penelope is blushing behind hers. Fear not, O lady of bubbles and glass, Capita coos. I would never harm you. I'm not afraid of you, mad thing, Penelope hisses. I just don't want you to touch me. Capita laughs again. Of course, of course. An honor reserved only for one. But how does a mortal catch infinity? By leaving bait without a trap, Penelope counters, and the conversation officially starts going above my head. You think a god is like a stray that you can feed until it comes on command? Capita says, and then suddenly starts laughing even harder. So to speak. The discordant tune of Penelope's soul plays a sliding, rising note of embarrassment. With the right food? Penelope asks, not a hint of her true feelings in her serious tone. Yes, if you know what they're hungry for. But that would require some capacity to understand the world around you, wouldn't it? Would the two of you quit with the riddles? I snap. I don't have any idea what you're saying. I suspect the lady knows that well, Capita taunts, but Penelope just scoffs and doesn't rise to what I assume was a jab at her. The three of us soon break away from the bustling festival streets and slink towards our laboratory, letting Capita inside. We make our way downstairs and call out the all-clear to Team Metamancy. Theodora and Margaret emerge soon after, reacting with surprise when they see us but not for the reason I was expecting. Why are you all wearing masks? Theodora asks, seeming a little worried. It can't be Skyhope Day already, can it? I'm afraid it can be, Penelope answers. Why? Is something the matter? She scratches the back of her neck, seeming temporarily lost. No, it feels like it hasn't been anywhere near that long since I woke up down here. I frown, moving my mask away from my face as Capita and Penelope do the same. I guess my revenants have sort of been stuck down here for a really long time, haven't they? They have no way to know when it's day or night, they don't get tired, and they have plenty of work to distract themselves with. It must be odd to have the world slip by unannounced. Vitamin seems to be blending in okay thanks to the tattoos you gave her, I say. Maybe we can get you two some time off as well. Let you see the sky and stuff. Yes, let's do that, Penelope agrees, though apparently quite reluctantly considering all the risks for what she sees is very little gain. But not right now. Theodora, Margaret, this is Capita. She is a splice and a cognomancer. Capita, by any chance would you be willing to demonstrate your abilities for us? Capita tilts her head. For my youngest sister, I would be honored. But to mold a mind I need a mind to mold, the dead will not do. Oh, I wouldn't worry, Penelope says, motioning for all of us to follow her into the room where we keep Sky's gift. We have a volunteer. We file in, a bound and gagged man, doomed from the moment he had failed Angelion, looking increasingly terrified as each of us enters. Capita grins a vulpine grin that would have fit just as easily on her fox mask. This will do nicely, she agrees, and we start to learn the most illegal of all blasphemies. You don't need to do anything, Theodora. You just need to watch. Ironically, the person least excited to be performing animancy is one of the two people here who happens to be animated by it. Theodora seems to quite enjoy the biomancy research she and Penelope have been getting up to most of every day now, but messing with a living man's soul crosses a line for her, apparently. Penelope, who has been trying to convince her to help, turns slightly to give me a meaningful look. Don't look at me, I say. I'm staying neutral on this. My whole life I've had to fight to keep the clothes on my back. Every trinket, every coin, every chunk of bread that was ever mine was a struggle against death. Everything I call my own is precious to me, be it a home, an object, or a person. Theodora is mine, and she wants to make her own choices. So I'm going to let her. Though ironically, that seems to be the best way to control her. Thank you, Vita, Theodora says, her appreciation giving my shard the purchase to grow deeper within her. Penelope, you have to know this isn't the animancy that we wanted to make. This isn't something I want to be able to do. I don't disagree, Penelope answers soothingly, an expertly crafted smile on her lips. It's a horrible temptation, one that we would be better off without. But we have been making no headway. One must understand the basics before they can develop their own methods, is that not so? Margaret stands next to me, even less inclined to join the conversation than I am. Her mix of irritation and open jealousy in Theodora's direction is probably caused by how she considers Theodora's valuable talent to be rightfully hers. Margaret told us back in Lycia that she had to fight dozens of her own kin for supremacy inside Theodora's body. It must have been one of the first things she ever did after being born, considering that at the time every Nora besides Penta and the one controlling Remus would have been less than a couple tendies old. What must it be like to have someone else's memories but consider them all your own? You know I hate when you're right about these things, Penelope, Theodora grumbles. And you know I rely on you to make sure I really am right, Penelope responds, her words both truth and carefully calculated manipulation. If I am wrong somewhere, you're the one I need to point it out. No, you're right, Theodora sighs. Of course you're right, and you're going to do it whether I help or not anyway, aren't you? Fine. She glances hesitantly at me, but starts casting mana sight and, for the first time while I'm around, soul sight, though she avoids looking my way. Okay. Capita says cheerfully, clapping her hands once. Now is the family blasphemy session, yes. I raise an eyebrow at her. I don't remember adopting Margaret. Vitamin said we're sisters, Margaret answers defensively. I guess I stand corrected, apparently I have adopted Margaret. She gasps and hops excitedly as I smash a small chunk of myself and pass her the resulting soul dust. I can't help but crack a grin at the sight. The former slimes are quite easy to please, and it never stops being cute. Let's begin, Penelope says, attempting to get everyone back on track. Capita nods, a grin splitting her face as tiny purple threads of soul creep out from her broken core. She turns to face our bound and gagged victim, who squirms futilely at the attention. A man looks in the mirror, Capita intones, stepping forward and leaning close to the bound man, and he sees his reflection. He does this often, always checking, lest he forget what he looks like. She wraps one hand around the struggling man's neck, though she does not squeeze. His fear alone causes his struggles to cease, and he stares at her in motionless terror. Why does he check? Perhaps he is obsessed. Perhaps he is cursed. But always, he checks the mirror, over and over, and what he sees there he knows to be himself. But what happens when I change the reflection? Her threads slip into the disgusting soul of the man who failed my family, slithering in through minuscule cracks and channels, like a snake hunting moles within their own tunnels. She pushes into him, violates him, and prepares to break him from the inside. Shall I make the reflection look like a frog? Capita coos. I could do so, but no matter how beautifully the reflection croaks, what would happen when the man sees it? If your mirror showed you a frog, would you believe yourself to be a frog? No. You still have the wisdom of a man. But if your skin was just a little greener, your tongue just the tiniest fraction longer, would you notice? Or would you believe what you see in the mirror to be strange, new, but still clearly you? Wait, cognomancy can't actually turn people and frogs, can it? I ask. No, obviously not. She's just saying major changes don't take, Penelope explains. Capita frowns, swaying slightly as her soul sparks, trying to form her thoughts into something coherent. No. The mirror is important, she insists. The mirror is always there. What separates cognomancy and necromancy is the presence of the man. The dead are but a reflection, burned into glass. Twist the reflection, and there is no viewer to disbelieve the mirror. Necromancy is power, necromancy is control. Whereas cognomancy is subtlety, cognomancy is patience. It is to make an illusion so real it ceases to be an illusion at all. Yes. I frown, trying to parse that. You're saying that, if I could put one of my shards into someone currently alive, it wouldn't make them devoted to me because they would be able to, what? Notice that something was affecting them and change their soul back. Capita gives me a smile of confirmation, her hand briefly squeezing tighter on the man's neck as his shivers of discomfort start becoming more serious twitches. Her hold lightens again when he calms down, enabling the man to take a gasp of air. Perhaps. The living have two selves, the mirror and the man. Each can change the other. This is how people grow. To mold and control a mind, we do not force the result, we control the growth. Penelope nods thoughtfully. That makes a lot of sense. Biomancy is similar, in that making massive or rapid alterations to the body only does more harm than good. Biomancy spells must be applied with patience, as their effects take a while to bear fruit. Capita nods back happily. Except perhaps for the masters of our disciplines, this is so. The artist's skill is incomparable to his sketches, but I only teach you what I know. To that end watch. Her threads have invaded deep into the soul at this point, and one has finally found what she seems to have been looking for. The tip of the thread digs into the soul, carving a purple gouge inside it. Theodora flinches. Scratch the reflection. Simplicity itself, Capita hums, turning to smile at Theodora. Do you see, scholar's soul? That is the first spell. Slowly, Theodora nods, her eyes flicking in different directions as her talent rapidly processes information in a way that no one else can. It's not 100% replicable, Theodora mutters slowly. Whatever you're doing to reach into the soul isn't a spell, only the scratch is. Capita nods. The soul is a plant. Mana is water, the body is soil. You hold power over fruit, but not the plant itself. There are some things only your queen's ilk can grow. But fear not, the artist did his weaving without a single thread. There is a way, though I cannot teach it. Theodora swallows, her body going through with the nervous gesture despite no longer being able to make a single drop of saliva or digest a single grain of wheat. Valka has a king, she says. Capita shrugs. You don't. As interesting as this all is, Penelope interrupts, we ultimately do not care very much about using cognomancy to control people. We are only interested in acquiring the spells necessary to manipulate a living soul, regardless of whether the manipulation affects personality or memory. Ultimately, we want to be able to remove and replace souls from one body into another without harming or killing them, not any of the rest of this. If anything, we want to be able to remove the sorts of manipulations you describe. Capita quickly cycles through surprise, consideration, and excitement as Theodora sends Penelope a thankful look. A pleasant ambition, Capita giggles. Then I shall cut my lessons as short as my sister, and skip to the meat. Hey! I snap. She laughs, and from there she moves on to a series of quicker demonstrations, adding and removing parts of the soul at Theodora's request. Penelope watches intently, only occasionally glancing my way to look me in the eye with soul sight active. It's embarrassing, but I focus on Capita's lessons, learning everything I can about cognomancy. A couple hours later, Capita declares that she's shown everything she has to offer, to which Penelope asks her to demonstrate her teleportation talent as well. For this favor, Capita answers slowly, I would wish a favor returned. Not content to offer anything to your little sister after all. Penelope presses. Penelope, don't call me that, I grumble. 'Tis not the work of art who requests this of me, and 'tis not her I request the favor from. O woman of armored heart, noble master of the body, I wish from you a boon. Penelope raises an eyebrow. I assume you mean me. Her face remains impassive as she starts rapidly deciding exactly how much she'd be willing to trade for a teleportation spell. What exactly do you want? Capita scratches her cheek, embarrassed and hesitant. I am of the understanding that you, too, are an artist. One of flesh, rather than spirit. I would not describe myself as such, but much of my personal wealth has been gained from spells I use to manipulate appearance, if that's what you mean, Penelope answers tersely. Were you looking for a makeover? Yes, Capita murmurs, but not for me. I beseech you to shape the sky. She nervously taps her fingers together while Penelope makes a slow, incredulous blink. Your lover and I openly despise each other, Penelope points out. Yees. Capita hedges, but what if you didn't? Just like that? Penelope answers flatly. Oh, of course, let's break out the scones and tea for the person that wants to kill my entire family. We'll sing nursery rhymes and play hopscotch together right before you both assassinate the king. Yes. Capita agrees happily. Yes, exactly. And then he won't kill you and then none of us have to be sad. My eyes narrow, tentacles clenching for war. So he plans to kill Penelope. He'll regret ever even thinking about it. Penelope, for her part, just gives an unimpressed huff. You will be sorely disappointed if you attempt to convince me with threats, she says firmly. Not threats. Capita insists. Fears. The sky is as vast as his anger. But you are the work of arts. You must be spared, and well, you are one of the few that could change wrath to gratitude. It is for both of you. Please. Sky doesn't even know you're asking this, does he? I realize. Favor to me, Capita agrees. But all for him. Please, flesh shaper. Make him himself. Penelope pinches the bridge of her nose. Assuming you can even put the two of us in the same room without starting a fight, what do you want me to do exactly? Make your lover look more like a man. It's obvious that Sky isn't even a man in the first place. I blink my eyes in surprise as Capita narrows hers dangerously. He is, she insists. Is that really a lie you want to tell to someone you're asking to perform biological modifications? Penelope fires back immediately. Honestly, think long and hard on that one, I know you need time to get your head working. Capita hesitates at that, drumming her fingertips together as her soul struggles to come to a decision. Are there not famous true nobles that opted not to disclose the content of their trousers? Capita murmurs in answer, squirming uncomfortably. Yes, quite a few, but I imagine they still told any biomancer that needed to muck around with their hormones. Penelope snaps. The scale of the task alters rather drastically depending on whether or not your lover has any testicles. I can't give you an answer unless I know. Capita scowls, refusing to look Penelope in the eyes. He is a he, she insists. Okay. Fine. Penelope snaps. But his second belly button might be more of an innie than an outie, she hedges. You guys are doing the thing again, I grumble. Could someone explain? Capita gives me a worried smile, increasingly uncomfortable to have to explain any of this and terrified of what my answer will be. His soul does not match his body, Capita says. Oh. Yeah, I feel that, I answer honestly. That really sucks. I think your situation might be a little different, Vita, Penelope says dryly. Anyway, my answer is no. Capita makes a pleading face. What? Why? Because you can't afford my time, Penelope says, crossing her arms. I've done something like this once before, you know. It wasn't easy, it wasn't complete, and it wasn't worth the paltry sum exchanged for either me or my client because most of what I did started reverting itself, at least partially, without continuous treatment. Which they couldn't pay for. One favor isn't worth the time you're asking of me if you expect me to cast on Sky every other day, and if you want me to do anything permanent I will need time to research it. It will take months of my time, at minimum, and if you haven't noticed my research schedule is currently rather busy. I only half listen to Penelope's whole explanation because I'm busy trying to parse the pulse of emotion she's trying to make as obvious as possible. Leave it to Penelope to figure out a way to turn my lie detector into a secret messaging system. She wants me to contradict her. You should do it anyway, I say, seeing no reason not to go along with her scheme. Penelope false scowls. Why? Immortality research is obviously more important. But this is more immediate, I argue, and find myself believing it. Better to have Sky like us, isn't it? Being stuck in a shitty body sucks. Also, it would help us since we're planning to double-cross him before the truce ends. If anyone can convince him to lower his guard, it's Penelope. You don't think that your situation is very different after all, do you, Vita? Penelope asks, chewing on the inside of her lip. I start to try to figure out what I'm supposed to say but realize that her question is honest this time. Does she mean the body thing? I mean, yeah I guess, I admit. It sounds the same to me. Penelope looks between me and Capita, then back to me. Do you want me to alter your treatments, she asks. I blink. You mean to look like a man? No. I mean, I don't really care. You can if you want to, but you can also not if you don't want to. It doesn't matter if I look male or female, I still don't look like me. The feeling of revulsion at myself has been growing slowly ever since I hatched, but there is nothing Penelope can do to fix that. It's not that my body is wrong, it's that I don't want a body at all. I just don't think about it wherever I can. Somehow, it's both easier and more difficult ever since my soul spread through the inside of my body. On one hand, I'm significantly more me-shaped, not because my body changed to look like me but because I changed to look more like my body. On the other hand, I now have to more intimately feel this increasingly disgusting meat vessel, and it is less than pleasant. Penelope stares thoughtfully at me for a while longer before finally turning back to Capita. Fine, she says. I make no promises, but I will look him over and see what I can come up with. If nothing else, it will be an excellent learning experience. With a squeal of joy, Capita immediately starts teleporting circles around Theodora before finally teleporting next to Penelope and scooping her up into a big hug. Thank you, spiky bubbles. Get off of me before I give you more warts than hair follicles. This has been my weirdest weird mask day yet. I take a deep breath and hold it, pulling in mana from my ocean. The warm waters of my true self wash through me, calming and reassuring. I am more than what I seem to be, and this truth is unassailable. Regretfully, I return focus to my meat, specifically my hands as I move and shape the mana into intricate patterns. I open my eyes, let out my breath, and let the spell complete. A dazzling blue copy of my eye appears in the air, tentacles writhing, and I smile as I watch Rowan's eyebrows raise in a mixture of pride and surprise. Nice work, Vita. It's pretty obviously an illusion, but a very complex one. Lots of moving parts. You're visualizing all of this at once. I'm cheating a little, I admit. Well, I'd be quite the hypocrite to disapprove of cheating, but what do you mean, exactly? This is me. I tell him happily, pushing the core of my soul down my arm and overlapping it with the illusion so that he can see me move in real time. I'm visualizing it by watching myself move. This is my soul. It's been about a month since Weird Mask Day, or the Skyhope Festival, as Penelope incorrectly insists that it is called, and during that time I have been very busy doing a lot of nothing. I spar with Lynn sometimes, and I have been learning kinemancy from Rowan, but frankly most of that has just been excuses to hang out with my family as much as possible. It's honestly really weird doing so. I actually know the names of all my siblings now, though that took quite a bit of effort to memorize. Having food, energy, and free time seems to have turned the kids into completely different people, but I suppose that's to be expected. We no longer have significant blocks of the day spent cowering or begging or stealing, so there are new things to do. Of course, that doesn't stop a lot of the kids from trying to go out and steal things anyway, which I understand. It's the one skill many of them have, and it feels like we have nothing else to do with our time. Others are training to fight, watching Lynn and I spar and taking lessons. I can't say I'm a big fan of that, but it will be years before any of them actually get into danger unless one of them happens on a lucky talent, so it's a problem that I can kick down the road. Unfortunately, kicking problems down the road seems to continue being a habit. I am really happy lately. It's nice to not have anything I have to kill, it's nice to just be able to feel my family be happy, to soak in that satisfying joy that I accomplished. But in the back of my head, there's a constant tapping. A little reminder that won't stay quiet, telling me that I don't have much time left to become more powerful than Sky. That my deadline for betrayal is closing, that every moment I waste not getting more powerful is a moment I will regret when danger once more knocks on my door. This joy is wonderful, but it is wrong. I shouldn't be sitting here feeling satisfied, because that complacency is exactly the flaw that caused so many of my problems up until this point. I'm not fulfilling my promise to myself. I'm not being proactive. I'm going with the flow, reacting with whatever feels right in the moment, and I know it's wrong no matter how much I love it. I should not be here. I am really, really happy I finally have this kinemancy spell down, though. That's what you look like? Rowan asks. Well. It's nice to see you, I suppose. He makes an illusion of his own, a copy of himself, and pretends to shake one of my tentacles with it. Ooh. Ronnie cheers, running up to us. He's one of the youngest ones, probably only 5 or 6. What's my soul look like? Well, your soul is still growing and developing, but currently it looks like this, I say, shifting the illusion showing my tentacular beauty into a small, black sphere with hints of dark purples blooming around the outside. I look like a bruise, Ronnie whines. That just means you're tough, I answer, grinning at him. That earns me a grin back, and soon I have every kid currently in the house running up and asking me to show them souls. Most of them are similar to Ronnie's, mainly black with splashes of one other color growing out of it. For a few of them, I can make educated guesses on what their talents might be based on the feel, but I don't voice that information out loud in fear of disappointing anyone if I'm wrong, or worse, having to tell some of the kids that I don't think they'll get talents at all. A knock on the door from Penelope spares most such worries, thankfully. She's a little early for the usual checkup, but not by much. The rest of the kids should be trickling in soon so they can receive their treatments. "Good morning, everyone," Penelope says, nodding politely. "Morning, Penelope," I respond, grinning her way. Emoting is annoying, but I'm relearning it. She smiles back, and it's always nice to see the rare occasions where her face matches her true emotions. Usually her feelings are squeezed, constrained, and regulated. She's always spending a background amount of effort ensuring whatever her body shows holds some advantage for her rather than just letting it react to how she really feels. When she discards that, though, her emotions come through brighter, her song plays clearer. It's pleasantly soothing. She has a backpack today, though she just sets it down when she sits and grabs the first volunteer for treatments, smacking any hands that reach out to grab it. From there, the treatments proceed as normal. When it's my turn, Penelope spends a lot more time yanking around my eye than usual, making considering hums to herself. "Looks like your eyes are more or less done," she says. "It's all blue now. Have you been getting any odd looks?" "A few more than usual, I guess," I answer with a shrug. "Does it really look that weird?" "It's rather striking, yes. In a good way, I think, but you're certainly hard to forget. I wouldn't be surprised if you have somewhat of a reputation." I nod glumly. "I'm out of the house a lot, doing things like buying food or picking up my wages from the Hunters Guild, earned from the solo missions I do around town nowadays. They're all pathetically easy, but no one else seems to want to do them since about 90% of the monsters in the city are in the sewers. Our team is more or less gone forever, and I've yet to be placed on a new one. Teams that lose their scout tend to not come back at all, so it's difficult to slot me into a damaged group, and I've made it clear that I'm not currently looking for a new one anyway." Penelope keeps to the medical ward. Orville has joined a different team, and I haven't seen Bentley since he quit. I kind of want to track him down, but what would I say? "Thanks for not outing me to the Templars." Penelope's treatments have been lasting longer and longer, but I don't really mind. I have no idea what all she's doing to me, but I trust her. I like that I can trust her. She pokes me and prods me all over, but I never feel like I'm in danger like I do with anyone else. It's kind of nice, especially since she rarely lapses into bursts of uncomfortable emotions while working, staying primly professional or at least distracted throughout our procedures. It's comfortable, and we have plenty of time to talk. "You've done a few procedures on Sky now, right?" I ask. "How has that been going?" "Infuriatingly annoying," Penelope grumbles. "He insists on keeping 2 other biomancers in the room with us, and he wants me to teach them everything I do to him. They are barely competent enough to prevent me from just lying about it." "So you regretfully admit he's not stupid enough to just let you walk in and kill him?" I snort. "I regretfully admit he's not stupid enough to just let me walk in and kill him," Penelope sighs. "Which I expected, but it's still somewhat disappointing. No slowly weakening his heart until he passes out from normal exertion while I'm on the other side of the city. I could still kill him with a disease, and it's hilarious to me that he thinks his pathetic excuses for biomancers could do anything about it, but it's the same sort of situation as the one you described to me shortly after we first met. He would die, but not fast enough, I recall. And when he realizes he's dying, it's mutually assured destruction." "Exactly," Penelope confirms. "I've ensured that you and I are going to be an absolute mess for anyone to try and kill. A lot of these procedures will improve your capacity to survive even if I'm not there to heal you. Still, if anyone could manage it, Sky could. His talent is one of the strongest I've ever seen." "Oh, you can do stuff that makes people harder to kill?" I ask. "Would you mind doing that for the kids?" Penelope gives a very slight chuckle, soft and quick, as some worry in her soul gets a little lighter. "Why Vita, I would love to." "Thanks. I say. That takes a load off my mind. But are you still doing the thing with Sky? Yes. I didn't actually expect to be able to cleanly assassinate him this way, so it's no real loss. Though at the same time, I didn't expect him to agree either. I figured Capita would try to convince him to work with me and just fail miserably. Yet she persisted for damn near a month, and now I spend nearly an hour of every other day getting berated by a petite 2-bit hoodlum. Turns out he's lying to you about not having many funds, however. Either that or I'm draining his operation dry. Well, I trust that you'll be able to get some information out of it, I say. Thanks for doing it. Are you sure you're going to be safe without me there? You don't need to worry about me, Vita, Penelope scoffs. I'm not stupid enough to let him take me anywhere he could attack without consequences. Besides, mutually assured destruction goes both ways. I give her a considering look. If someone actually does manage to kill you, what will happen? I ask. She just laughs, and though the rest of the house gives her worried glances at the sound of it, I'm just happy she's looking forward to it. If someone is that dumb, I'll do my best to make sure you get to watch the aftermath, I promise. Much appreciated, Vita, she chuckles. So, I was wondering. Do you have any plans for the rest of the day? I frown. She knows that I don't, but I tell her so anyway because that's a social thing people do. In that case, Penelope says slowly, I was wondering if you wanted to go out. I freeze. Did I hear that right? No. Oh no. She's actually doing it. What do I say? I want to say no. It's not personal, I care about Penelope. She's amazing. She literally changed my life. But I'm not attracted to women, I'm attracted to men against my will, and I don't want to date anybody. Certainly not a noble. I don't want to go to fancy dinners or plays, I don't want to hobnob with the upper class, I don't want to have to be a part of some clandestine plot to hide from Anne or murder her current fiancé. But I don't want to tell her no either. I don't want to lose her. What do I? Oh. Well, I guess that sounds pretty fun. I've been meaning to do that anyway. You want to come with? I ask her. She chuckles. That's what I'm asking, yes. She taps her chest with her knuckles, letting the dull thud-thud show she's armored and ready. You think I'm going to let you break your legs alone out there? The backpack has plenty of water and some food that I can actually stomach, and I've taken the liberty of giving notice to the guild. We should be good to rampage for a few days, if you like. I grin and immediately lean in to give her a huge hug, which she returns while radiating an aura of overwhelming smugness. I'd love to. I say. What brought this on all of a sudden? Stress. And of course Johann has been bugging me to get some damn time off, so I figured why not commit some morally blameless genocide with my best friend? And partner in crime. I add. And queen among slaves, she finishes, eminently amused. Indeed. I know we get to see each other every day for the treatments, but it's always work, work, work. I think we deserve a little fun, and you deserve a lot of food. I promise not to complain about whatever insane thing you decide to put in your mouth if you promise to leave a few monsters alive for me to experiment on. Deal, as long as you help me prepare it all for eating. She sighs extra dramatically. Fine. If you must twist my arm over it. Heck yes. I cheer. I'm already in my armor, since I always dress in my armor, so I just grab a bit more gear and then the two of us are ready to go. This is exciting. With Penelope's help, I'll be eating the whole forest in no time. We wander out to the walls, chatting about what we did yesterday and other nothings. A quick check by the guards and we are outside, vast tans and greens replacing the dirt and stone of the city. The forest is ahead of us, and I do my best to focus on the scents in the air, the colors on the ground, the feeling of wind on my skin. These things aren't as beautiful to me as they used to be. I can see that, when I look for it, and I realize it's a loss. I don't really know what to do about it, though. I wish I didn't hate my body. I wish I wasn't disgusted by things that I never used to despise. My hatching changed me, took humanity away from me and crushed it. I knew that from the start, and frankly I would never dream of going back. I just wish I could have kept the best of both worlds. I wish I could feel the wind and smell the air without the background of dread and wrongness. I want to retreat back into my comfortable soul, ignore my body, ignore its upsides because they really aren't worth the so many parts of it that I hate. But that has its own problems. I'm stuck. Trapped between two imperfect aspects, faulty flesh and half-grown soul. Neither is a substitute for the other, no matter how much I wish they were. We enter the forest together, and I take a slow, deliberate breath, feeling the hollow, wet pair of sacs inside me expand as they suck in foul, mana-saturated air, then push it out as reedy bands of muscle press them back together. Suffer through it. I may not like my body, but I still need it. So, Penelope asks, glancing slightly down at me. Actually at me. She'd casted soul sight once we got away from the city. Where to first? Everywhere, I answer with a shrug. We're just looking for a monster too dumb to run or too slow to succeed. And then I cut myself off a little, knowing that she's really going to like what I have to say next but fearing that it might be one of those things she likes a little bit too much. Oh, screw it. This is Penelope. She saved my life, she saved my whole family, and there probably isn't anyone in the world that understands me better. She deserves this. Would you like an army? I ask her. I swear, her grin nearly splits her head in half. Look at them twitch. Penelope crows, barely managing to speak coherently between her gasping breaths as she tries not to roll off the giant undead beetle we're both sitting on. This is the first onset. It starts with muscle spasms, so pretty soon they'll. Her words are cut off as she erupts into gleeful laughter, the colony of little disciples in front of us falling into severe seizures. The many-limbed creatures, being boneless except for the mostly spherical core all their tentacles attached to, flail and writhe like snakes struck by lightning. Far from the occasional jerky movements I expected, the monsters violently slam their bodies across the ground, twitching and jerking with their full strength. Their skin smashes into hard dirt, scrapes over rocks, and injuries pile up internally and externally as their muscles rebel with unnatural fury. A few of them let out brief screams of pain and terror before their lungs are also seized into uncontrollable action and ultimately, fatally, their hearts. The macabre slapstick lasts nearly 5 minutes before all of them die, and I wait in silence as Penelope fails to stop laughing throughout the entire test. I'll have to apologize to Jermaine when I get home, but despite how cute little disciples are I can't help but find Penelope's joy to be infectious. No pun intended. It all worked. Penelope exclaims, small beads of water pooling in the corners of her eyes due to how hard she's laughing. It all went exactly how I thought it would. No, even better. They skidded along the ground like. She burst into uncontrolled laughter again, and uncontrolled is not a word I ever thought I would be using to describe Penelope unless things start going very, very wrong. Here she is though, testing out what she described as the less professional pathogen concepts. Apparently, she has a large collection of diseases that she'd otherwise never get to use because they're impractical or inefficient in accomplishing their final result. Killing the little disciples over the course of a few minutes in which they make a horrible racket would certainly be a terrible way to contribute to how we traditionally worked with our team. Stealth was so much more important back when this part of the forest was threatening. I'm impressed, I say honestly, sitting cross-legged beside her. I remember back on our first mission you couldn't infect the little disciples at all. And I never forgave myself for it, she agrees. I've thought up 20 viable diseases to attack their unique immune systems since that day. I think I like this one best. I laugh and hop off the beetle. It's not a particularly impressive creature, and I just made it a dreg, but it's the first thing we found that was large enough to carry both of us and stupid enough to not run away from me before I killed it. I have to admit, I find it a rather pleasant ride. Approaching the pack of about 30 little disciples, I swiftly grab all their souls, stick shards in them, and shove them back into their bodies. Once they're all awake and surrounding me, I point back towards Penelope. You will not hurt her, I order. You will treat her as you would me. My new undead respond with frustrated chittering noises, as while they can't actually understand language they are intelligent enough to have opinions on things, and my orders seem to convey enough meaning to work as a rudimentary communication method. They remember being infected, most of them have figured out that Penelope is the source, as a result they don't particularly like her at least for a few moments, until my shard more thoroughly infects them and enforces my words. By the time I make it back to the beetle, those that aren't crawling all over me happily want to do the same to her, and she lets them. You can be Jermaine Jr., I tell the first one to crawl up and rest on my head. They're still warm, Penelope comments. I know that isn't surprising, considering how many recent corpses we've both been wrist deep in, but still. It's like having pets again. You even used these for experiments as well, I comment, recalling how she claimed to have killed her previous family pets. Exactly. Penelope laughs. Except this situation is somewhat reversed, in that I get to keep the pet only after I perform the experiment. Much preferred, I must say. I chuckle at that, scratching Jermaine Jr. at the base of her tentacles, which elicits a delighted coo. Our army has expanded considerably in the 5 or so hours we've been in the forest, although we've been largely lacking in variety. A significant percentage of monsters seem to have some kind of danger sense, which I suppose is completely understandable for all the same reasons hunters don't go out into the forest without someone that can sense problems before they get close. Unfortunately, my diet today is limited to whatever creatures can't tell that certain death approaches them, which is mostly an uninteresting smattering of scavengers. Penelope theorizes that the ability to detect how dangerous something is when alive just isn't as useful when your main diet is dead things, but who knows? Either way, little disciples are the only creatures I've opted to make risen instead of dregs. Of course, at some point the low quality of each individual member of the army is overshadowed by the fact that we have about 200 enlisted. Penelope is loving it. How are you not out here all the time, she asks, her laughter having finally settled down into a content smile. I knew you had to hold back the sake of the team, but this isn't being a hunter at all. Watcher's eyes, we could expand into the forest with power like yours. We can get enough fertile ground to solve the food crisis. I guess. I answer noncommittally. Why couldn't someone like Galdret do the same? She threatened to destroy all of Lisha, and I'm pretty sure she has the power to do it. Surely she could win some more ground against the forest. She could, without a doubt, Penelope agrees. The problem is that we wouldn't have the forces necessary to keep the ground. The boundaries between the forest and our growing zones need constant maintenance. Poisons must be set and refreshed, patrols must keep constant watch. The manpower required is immense, and while it's nowhere near as bad as being a hunter, the job tends to have a high, lethal turnover. If we expand deeper into the forest, that necessitates stronger guards to deal with the more serious threats, but the majority of our current labor is relatively weak slaves. We wouldn't be able to afford it otherwise. And undead are basically free expendable slave labor, I finish. Which could provide the sort of defense Galdric can't just because she's one person and she has to sleep. Yeah, that makes sense. But that's not what you were talking about when you asked why I'm not out here all the time, is it? She sighs, her eyes drifting up towards the canopy. I watch her with all 3 eyes, taking effort to pay attention to anything I think might be a social cue. The abnormal lack of tension in her muscles, the way she sits with her knees bent and both legs to one side, the looseness of the straps on her armor. It all speaks to her being relaxed, a feeling her soul clearly matches. Too clearly, almost, to the point that I think she's going out of her way to match her actions with her feelings as much as possible. It's kind of funny. she puts so much effort into letting herself do what feels natural that it kind of undermines the entire endeavor, but she does seem to enjoy it anyway. Like she's stretching a muscle that has been slept on wrong, so that every movement is both pain and relief in equal measure. There are no Templars here, she eventually answers me. No other nobles, no laboratories, no obligations, and no witnesses. We can do anything here, and it will never get back to anyone. You are the only person that will ever know, and you understand. I love that. I nod, letting my hands go through the motions of the meat-treating spell as I listen. I cast it on one of the little disciples, petting it softly as I bring it up to my mouth, bite off one of its tentacles, and slurp it down like a super thick piece of pasta along with the strands of soul trapped inside. My risen whimpers in pain a bit, but quickly stops as I continue to give it scratches. Holy shit, this tastes so good. No wonder Vrothizo have ensouled flesh as their only diet. It is pretty great out here, I agree. Let's not underestimate the forest, we can still totally die. I can feel some crazy things, you know. But being surrounded by hundreds of undead, I don't know, it just makes me feel really safe and comfortable. I can just spread out my senses and know that there's a wall of loyalty in every direction. It's awesome. I get the impression that there is a, but coming, Penelope muses. But I don't feel like I really need that anymore, I guess, I confirm, shrugging. When I first came out here to feast, I was just trying to get away from everything. Because of Angelion, you know. I love devouring shit out here, and I feel a lot safer when it's both of us, but the first time it was a pretty aggressive lack of self-preservation. She nods. I understand. I'm glad you're starting to look ahead towards your survival, because I must say it has never been as strong a trait in you as I'd like. I laugh at that. Guilty as charged, call the guards, I joke. I think living at home, the new home, has helped a lot. I've had time to think, time to focus on myself a little. Lynn and Rowan are especially nice to be around, because they know everything but they're both a bit more I don't know, normal. Not like us, but in a good way. Being able to have a safe home with everyone is such a dream come true. I feel her already substantial pride swell at that, so I decide to indulge it. I know, I tell her. It's all thanks to you. The house is perfect. You did incredible. You are incredible, you know that. I feel, in order, her notice that her body is about to blush, her instinct to physically suppress it, and her ultimate decision to just let it happen. Her face blooms just the slightest bit red as she gives me a smug smile. I do know that, she confirms haughtily. But it means quite a lot to hear it from you. I grin back, but we are quickly interrupted as my senses detect multiple dregs dying to a soul that doesn't feel like it should be strong enough to accomplish the feat. Contact with something interesting, I announce, hopping off the beetle. Retreat, I order, and my army stops committing suicide. It's a carnivorous oozoid, Penelope comments as I set her down. Could you do me a favor and cut off a small bit of it before you kill the main body? I'd like to keep some for testing. I raise an eyebrow at her, smirking a little as she pulls out a fairly large glass jar. Traditionally, you're not much of a proponent for keeping slimes around. Very funny, she deadpans, handing me the container. Oozoids have an interesting and intimate connection to magic that might be useful to research, and if not the carnivorous ones are at least made of one of the most powerful flesh-dissolving acids known to man, although it likely isn't technically an acid, since it loses its properties when it ceases to live. Perhaps it's even natural biomancy. I nod. As usual, Penelope has good reasons. Given that my spear is chitin, this thing can probably burn right through it, so I order some zombies to sacrifice themselves by smacking the oozoid hard enough to make pieces fly off. One of the decent-sized globules actually pulls a chunk of the oozoid's soul with it, so I coax it inside the jar with a few pokes from my tentacle and then kill the big one with another. Here you go, I say, handing the jar back to her. Hopefully it won't break and kill her somehow. You know, on the subject oozes. I still have Penta's soul. You realize she's going to be one of the first people I revive, right? I know, Penelope sighs, sitting down by the trunk of a nearby tree as she swirls the small, captured ozoid in its jar. I wish you wouldn't, but I understand. If we don't revive her as a Nora, most of my objections go away. But honestly, Vita, why do you hold her in such a high regard? I'm fairly certain she didn't even like you. I wince a little at that. Yeah, I don't know if she did either, at least not until Lisha. I just kinda didn't pick up on it until she told me. I don't know what to say. I just wanted to be friends with her, I guess, and just before the end I think we really were starting to become that. It feels like I failed her. And I don't want to fail my friends, you know. I suppose I have been failing you as a friend, Penelope eventually says. I blink in surprise, making sure to turn and physically stare at her so she can see all of my incredulity. Didn't we just get done talking about how you're basically the most awesome thing that has happened to me? I ask. Well. Not in so many words, but I'm referring to something more specific, she explains, blushing a bit again. Back when we first got home after Lisha, you made me promise to try and to be honest with you. To believe that I can trust you with the things I keep secret from everyone. I have not been doing so, because so many of my secrets are about you. I'm not sure what to say, so I say nothing. She soon realizes that's an indication to continue. So I want to change that. I have a few things I want to get off my chest. Don't look at me, I tell her. Your breast size is your own fault. She laughs at that, shaking her head. Well, let's start with that. I know that you hate your chest, but I have been the one making it increase in size anyway. While it is true I believe this offers you advantages, at least part of my motivation is selfish. In reality, the benefits it provides are probably not worth the degree to which you find them distasteful, and I have persisted with the alterations anyway. I say. Well, quit doing that then. Again, she chuckles at my response. I shall. Then we're square, I answer, shrugging. Thanks for telling me. I started the operations to experimentally alter your family's biology months ago, not recently as I have allowed you to believe, Penelope admits. I did not ask for their permission, your permission, or the permission of your guardians until well after already starting. But you think these alterations will make them more likely to survive? I ask. I do, yes. Not all of them improve survival, but they are all designed to be beneficial. However, they are also the first human test subjects I have used, so there is significant risk. I chose to do so anyway. She swallows. I honestly think they help, she tells me. There have been no negative complications so far. Then thank you. I say again. I trust you not to hurt them. Always have. Her lip trembles for a moment as a swell of emotion pushes its way through her, but she pushes it right back, swallowing the joy and relief from hearing my words to move on to the next thing she's been afraid to tell me. I guess there are a lot more than I thought, but I know this is hard for her. For all intents and purposes, she manages to say, I murdered Penta. That one takes me by surprise. The others I suspected, but this hits me like a slap to the face. Murdered Penta. What does that even mean? She did kill her, that's true, but she was forced to as a consequence of my own failure. She would have never needed to put an anti-Nora infection in my body if I hadn't gotten myself infected by Remus's slime and trapped as a result. I anticipated the likelihood that you wouldn't drink the poison and get infected long before the dinner, she explains. When the dinner began, I took the first excuse to leave and go to the bridge. I knew you would be unable to cross the bridge if I made you believe the mists were down. I planned to use your possession as an excuse to kill Penta from the start. How did you know I wouldn't drink the poison? I ask, dumbfounded. We had a rat to hide Penta in, that's what I was supposed to have done instead of letting her have that speech. I didn't know, Penelope answers, shrugging. I had a number of excuses prepared. Reasons it would seem like I was forced to infect you in nearly any outcome. In the worst-case scenario, I was prepared to leverage my position as your only defense against the Templars in order to just murder her without attempting to hide it. I knew that the dinner plan had a high likelihood of creating the outcome I wanted, so I let you go through with it without reminding you about the poison, without talking to you or strategizing with you at all. That was entirely intentional. I could have easily prevented you from getting possessed in the first place, but I left the possibility open because it was the most convenient to my personal vendetta. Shit. That's the truth. I know it's the truth, but it's still kind of hard to believe it. I've been blaming myself for Penta's death this whole time, and ultimately I still made the mistake that led to it. But the admittance that she would have killed her anyway. Why? I ask her. I thought you liked the poetic justice of trapping her in my body the way she trapped you in yours. She sighs. A number of reasons. Most of them irrelevant. I hated her, Vita. I still hate her, hate knowing that she'll be back, but it has faded a bit since then. I promise I won't interfere with her resurrection. The ultimate problem is that while I certainly hated her for the torture she inflicted on me, that was only a fraction of my objection, in truth. What do you mean? I ask. I can almost see how the things Penta did to Penelope justify Penelope's actions, but it still seems so wrong. Vita, she stumbles over her words a bit, which is so very unlike her that my focus is taken off my thoughts. I desperately wish, with everything in my heart, to be a good person. I don't understand, I say. I think you're pretty great. Are you saying I'm not a right-thinking person? I ask, wrinkling my nose. Hey, he beat up my mom, I protest. I nod slowly, chewing that over. I know this is something I will fume about later. But right now I just look at her and wonder, does this actually change what I think of the Penelope I know? The Penelope I care about? If it makes you feel any better, I like you a heck of a lot more now than I used to like her, I tell her. Her knees are hooked up to her chest, having rested watering eyes on them after saying her piece. She stops staring at them, turning to me with a war of hope and disbelief inside her. Even now? Even after that? She asks. I murdered your friend. I shrug. We'll make her better, I say. Right? Nora was our friend, and I murdered her. Can you forgive me for that? Of course, she says, almost breathlessly. That was a matter of necessity. I would have killed her anyway, Penelope presses. I shrug. You would have tried. And then I guess our relationship might have been really different. I don't know. But given things as they are, even if it's not fair to Penta, it's difficult to not be happy with how things turned out. Like I said, you're pretty great. You're insane. Penelope insists. You're completely inhuman. No one should just be okay with this. I was afraid you would kill me. I might have a few months ago, I guess, I agree. But I forgive you. You've earned that much. Humanity is overrated anyway, I answer with a shrug. That gets her to laugh some more, wiping tears from her eyes. It is, isn't it? She agrees softly. It really is. I say nothing for a while, letting the last vestiges of her sobs trail away as we sit shoulder to shoulder under the tree. So any more island-shattering dark revelations you have for me today in order to try and make me attack you? I ask when she finishes. She laughs, voice still shaky. For now. I ask hesitantly. She responds with a coy smile, the effect only slightly diminished by the way her cheeks still glisten with water. Her fingers start to move in the complex patterns of a spell I don't recognize, and when it completes I see a change start to occur in her soul. Power flows out of it, noticeably weakening her in exchange for a different sort of strength. The spiritual energy fills the rest of her body, flowing into her limbs and forming a lattice inside her skin. What is this? I ask, scratching my cheek. A spell version of the way warriors enhance their bodies with their soul. Not quite, Penelope answers, and then she slowly reaches out with her hands to the tentacle I've been scratching myself with. And she grabs it. My breath catches. My body freezes. She holds on to me, the real me, and pulls that part of me close. I wrap my tentacle around her arm, squeezing lightly and feeling the resistance, the contact. What? I barely breathe. I knew it had to be possible, Penelope explains softly. By studying your body in the Vrothizo teeth you brought back, I figured out how it works. It is the first original animancy spell I designed. How does this help your research? I whisper. It doesn't, really, she answers with a shrug. Arguably, I wasted a month on this. But I knew that going in. Why would you? I swallow. No, I know why. I know what she's going to say. Well, that ties into my last confession, doesn't it? Penelope says. The one I'm sure you already know. Countless tentacles emerge from my core, wanting to poke her, feel her, touch her, but all I do with them is hide my eye and hide my face, overwhelmed with emotion and embarrassment. I love you, Vita, Penelope says. All of you, real and fake, material and immaterial. I know it makes you uncomfortable, but I have to ask. Would you consider a relationship with me? Would you consider a relationship with me? The very words fill me with fear. No. No, I don't want that. I just want to be friends. Best friends, maybe. Something special I have with no one else, but every aspect of dating, everything that I know of what a relationship is just isn't me. But I can touch her. I can feel her. I can hold something and not have the person I'm holding freak out with an unrelenting dread like people do when I touch their souls. How did she do this? She's too special, too important. I don't want to say yes, but I don't want to tell her no, and I don't know what to do. Wait, Penelope says hurriedly, squeezing me, the real me, the part one feel truly in control of, just the slightest bit harder. Whatever you're thinking of, give me a moment to. She licks her lips nervously, eyes flicking around as she rapidly tries to decide on what to say. Like a coward, I focus on her, doing everything I can to avoid thinking about her question. I should just say no. Right? I know that you're non-standard, she continues slowly. Whatever you think I mean by the question, it doesn't have to be that. You're different. I'm different. We can do things differently. I swallow, nervously peeling a few tentacles away from my face. Differently how? I ask. Well, if you're open to the idea, we would have to explore that, I suppose. Figure out what we want and don't want out of us. I mean, I know that to some degree things I want are not always the same things you want, but I believe that we. She cuts off with surprise as I poke her cheek with a tentacle. Sorry, I squeak. Continue. Her lips twitch into a smile, a bit more confidence filling her as a bit more embarrassment does the same with me. She scoots a little closer, idly winding my tentacle around her arm. When I talk about a relationship, what does that mean to you? She asks. I shrug, squirming slightly as I fail to resist the urge to wrap part of me around her ankle. I don't know, I mumble. I guess what Lynn and Rowan have. Where they hang out together all the time and smooch a lot and have sex every few nights. Or I don't know, I guess what you and Lord Erebus have, where he's always trying to get you to go to fancy stuff and eat dinner together and spend time with you even if you're busy and you're sort of obligated to do it because it's a relationship. I mean, can you even ask me this if you have a fiancé? Penelope gives me kind of a sad look. Vita, I promise you, no matter how this plays out, you and I are never going to be anything like Johann and I, she insists. You don't need to worry about him. I'll take care of him. She obviously means the murdery kind of taking care of him, not the kind with actual caring about someone involved. Figures, but whatever. I don't like fancy dinners, I don't want to monopolize your time, she continues. Yes, my relationship with him is one built around obligation, but that's not the kind of relationship I want any more than you do. You know I don't particularly like the man. I shrug. Maybe that's a bad example, I admit. But it's like Matteo went and got berated by his girlfriend before our mission because he felt obligated to subject himself to it. Relationships are more serious than friendships, right? It's not just about liking someone. You have to put all this effort into catering to them. With most people I don't even understand how they feel, I'm not gonna be able to do any of that for you. But you already do that for me, Penelope says. I don't think you understand the degree to which just being around you is an emotional relief. It's like I'm relearning to be myself. I know what you're like, Vita. I don't love you in spite of that, I love you because of it. The way you think about people differently is beautiful to me. Have I ever asked you for anything you felt like you couldn't provide? I wrap another tendril around her waist. She scoots closer to me, so we're touching shoulder to shoulder. No, I admit. You've never asked. But I know you want some things like that. You want the Lynn and Rowan stuff too. I know. I can't do that. She purses her lips, considering for a moment how blunt to be. Kissing and sex, she asks. I nod. She nods back, slowly, taking the confirmation of what she already suspected in silence for a while. Is it because I'm a woman? She eventually asks. Because I am in the process of learning how to change that, if that's what you prefer. I shake my head, perhaps much more vigorously than I need to. I can tell Penelope hates the idea, but she would still do it if it meant she would get what she wants from me. It isn't the problem though. I don't find you attractive, I admit. And, I do find a lot of men attractive. But that doesn't change anything. I would still never want to do that kind of thing with them. It's just gross human stuff. Penelope supplies after I trail off. I shake my head again. No, it's not that either. I just don't want anyone touching me in those places. Ever. It freaks me out. I trail off again. This conversation is just nothing but uncomfortable. I don't know how to explain it, I tell her. It's weird talking about this. I promise you, I will never speak a word to anyone else about anything we discuss here today, she says solemnly, and means it. I'd like to understand you better. I nod slowly, working the words over in my mind as I slowly convince myself to say them. I've, tried that kind of thing with myself. Alone? I admit hesitantly. Penelope shrugs. Right, I nod. I know that, I feel people do it all the time. I didn't really get why nobody talks about it until now, where I'm trying to talk about it I guess. She chuckles. A lot of things are like that. It feels different when it's about you. Yeah, I agree. Anyway, it's kind of nice at first but I don't know, does your body have, spasms? Not the kind you had the little disciples do, a lot less than that. But it's still, involuntary. Yes, Penelope says, already starting to understand. Most people do. That makes you uncomfortable. I trail off, my thoughts stalling as a result of having thought I had more to say than I actually do. The words just fell out, dropped in a heap at Penelope's feet. It's not something I ever expected to explain to anyone. She waits patiently, making absolutely certain that I'm done before responding. That's not a necessary part of our relationship, Penelope answers simply. I make a face at her, not quite believing that. Everybody seems to do it, I counter. And again, it's something you want, isn't it? I can tell it is. She frowns a little, but doesn't deny it. She's too smart to lie like that. I have been taught from a young age that, for a noble woman, sex is more an act of manipulation than it is pleasure, Penelope says instead. That is what my relationship is like with Johann. It's not displeasing, but it's not really intimate either, at least not for me. I have to make him feel like it is, of course. You are, I think, the first person I have ever known that makes me feel like I want that intimacy. I want to give genuinely, and receive in kind. And that is not something I know how to do, really, but perhaps it wouldn't require anything that would make you uncomfortable. If you are interested in trying, I mean. I don't really know what that means, I admit. Well, Penelope hums, putting an arm around my shoulders, does this make you uncomfortable? No, I tell her, grabbing the hand with yet another tentacle and continuing to marvel at my ability to do so. Shoulders are fine. At least, they are for you, but that's what matters here. Okay, so I have special shoulder permissions, Penelope says, grinning at me. Good to know. But do you like this, or do you just tolerate it? I take a deep breath. Turns out breathing really does help with focus, just not for the things I usually want to focus on. I keep my mind on Penelope's arm around my body, the pressure and very slight warmth making its way through my armor, the assurance to my deeply ingrained instincts that yes, this is safe. She is safe. This is nice, I decide. Okay, Penelope murmurs, her grin turning mischievous. And what about this? She lifts her arm off my shoulders, and I regretfully let her, my tentacle unwinding from that arm. Then she stands up, brushes off her butt, then to my great surprise she swiftly turns and plops herself down into my lap. I squeak, feeling my face turn red. I'm a very small person, and though Penelope isn't all that much taller, she's still larger than me and she weighs more than I do. The weight is surprising, and briefly causes me to panic before I remind myself that I can quite effortlessly throw Penelope off of me if I want to. Heck, I could remove her with only tentacles if I really felt like it, unless whatever conditions that end the spell come to pass. I'm a bit hesitant to touch her more than I already am, though, because I am increasingly aware of the fact that while her spell allows me to touch her body, it does nothing to make my tentacles tangible to anything else, most notably including her clothing. Too much? She asks seriously. I wrap my arms, both physical and a few immaterial, around her waist to hug her in place. No, I whisper. It's nice. Her smile grows wider, and she places one hand on my shoulder before wrapping the other under my chin, holding my head in place like she does when examining my eyes. Again, I know that the support is not a trap, the pressure is far from inescapable. It's just there to guide. Then, she whispers, leaning slowly in closer to me, what about this? For a good few moments I'm utterly dumbfounded as to what she's doing, moving her body forward and closing her eyes. Even after her lips pucker out, it takes me a beat to register the terrifying realization that she is about to kiss me. My brain stalls as I feel her breath on my face. In a moment of panic, I thrust a tentacle up between her lips and mine. She realizes what it is as soon as she touches it and she opens her eyes, moving her body away. No kissing, then? She asks, trying and failing to hide her disappointment. Sorry, I whisper. And no kissing. She nods, a soft smile returning to her features. But cuddling is okay. Cuddling is okay, I confirm, my arms still around her. She sighs, relaxing her body and leaning up against mine. That's a win for me then, she murmurs. I'll gladly take it. I hold her for a while, incomplete thoughts fluttering around the inside of my head, unable to be voiced. It is nice, even if it is also many, many other things. Penelope is warm, and holding her body against mine is somehow a comfort that not even an army of 10,000 risen could match. Still, thoughts keep nagging at me. This isn't all you wanted, I remind her. She shrugs, not moving away. You shouldn't have to do that, I protest. Well, unless I want to spend my whole life rather sexually frustrated, the only other alternative is that I keep a few politically relevant people on the side who can be swayed by that sort of thing. I feel it would be rather crass to go through all this effort to date you just to turn around and grab a few self-important concubines that think they're lords, though. She wrinkles her nose. Or ladies, I suppose, but the two gay ones I know are moving out of city. I mean, I don't really care if you do that kind of thing, I say frankly. As far as I'm concerned, you can have sex with anybody you want as long as it isn't me. Penelope laughs. Why, Vita, I think that's the most romantic thing anyone has ever said to me, she jokes. By the way, just a quick reminder that I love you. I think about that, squirming a little as I adjust her weight. This is weird and different, not at all something I ever imagined myself doing. No matter how I look at Penelope, I really don't find her attractive at all. But I do like having her close. I like holding her, I like being able to press my soul against her skin. Beyond that, I can see how she's more than a friend. She's a partner. I don't consider myself stupid, but she's smart in all the ways I'm not. More than anyone else, she understands me and what I need. She cares. That's special, unique to her, not induced by a feeling of obligation or outright mind control. Maybe I don't love her in exactly the same way she loves me, but I love you too, I tell her with certainty. It's hard to describe what hearing those words does to her. In some ways, if I'm being reductive, they do nothing. She's still exactly the same Penelope, in every way that matters. But the rush of relief and joy that fills her is warmer than the tightest squeeze I could give her. Is that a yes, then? She asks. Yeah, I decide. I'm still not sure what all it means. I'm probably just going to default to treating you exactly like I always have, if we're being honest. That's fine, she says. That's more than fine. Although fair warning, while it's wonderful that you're open to letting me be with other people, I suspect I'm more the murderously jealous type. I blink. Huh. So maybe don't cuddle like this with anyone else, she says pleasantly, absolutely dead serious. What about with Roscoe? I ask immediately, eyes narrowing. She blinks, taken aback a little. Well, I suppose that's a reasonable exception. And Jermaine? I ask. Jermaine too, yes, she grumbles. You can cuddle with as many stuffed animals as you like. That's a relief. The important stuff is taken care of. What about Vitamin? I ask. She gives an exasperated sigh, irritated at being forced to renege on her threat. Physical intimacy with family is different, and any amount you previously displayed in my presence is also acceptable. Okay. I nod. Okay. Want to go kill some more monsters? Yes, she answers, chuckling, but instead of getting up she rolls off my body, picking me up and moving me with her so that we end up switching places, me curled up on top of her. But I'd like to stay here a little while longer, if that's all right, she murmurs. I'm still for a moment, but slowly I wrap my multitudinous self around her, settling in comfortably. My eyes close as she starts to stroke my hair. Yeah. Staying here is good too. It's weird to sort of have a girlfriend. After cuddling for a while underneath a tree, some monsters eventually got brave enough to approach, so we had to stop while I killed and ate them. Then we spent another day heading deeper in, maybe even deeper than I've ever been in the forest before. The speed at which the souls around us started to escalate in power the further we got, and the realization that, even once I started to feel outclassed, the forest had plenty more danger to show us, well, it was the right kind of humbling, I think. When a powerful soul inside my range started screaming for help in a disturbing, parroted version of human language, we both made the decision to leave rather than investigate. Still, I had fun. We both had fun. And during this past 10 days we've gone out to the forest 4 other times, on quick one-day excursions to get me more power. I think I've finally reached the point where I can yank Sky or Capita straight out of their bodies, killing them as soon as they get close enough. Obviously, though, there's one major problem with that. Your range is still only about 7 feet, right? Penelope confirms, taking a bite out of some sort of fried pastry thing that we just bought from a street stall and wrinkling her nose with distaste. Penelope is dressed down, perhaps more dressed down than I've ever seen her, even counting hunter missions. Rather than her usual loopy, swirly hairstyle, she's moved the entirety of her impressive hair to a single braid, her ever-present dresses replaced with some admittedly still quite fancy trousers. It strikes me as possible that her sudden change in outfit is representative of something, but I know better than to assume I have the social wherewithal to determine what. We were out on what I think might be a date, but neither of us have ever at any point referred to it as one. When I say that I sort of have a girlfriend, that's also what I mean. We've never called each other that, either. Penelope has always been very careful to say that we are in a relationship, but never what that relationship actually is. I'm fine with this, of course. I like it that way, and I'm fairly certain she knows, and it's exactly why she describes it like that. True to my predictions, I don't feel like I'm doing anything different than I was before this relationship officially started. The difference is entirely in Penelope, and the way she likes to hug or hold me whenever we are in private. Again, I like it. If most people tried to grab me the way she so often does, I'd probably break one of their bones, but that's more a matter of familiarity than anything. I'm used to assuming that everyone is a threat, that I constantly need to look out for myself because no one else will do it for me. Sometimes a panicked instant of that triggers when she hugs me unexpectedly, but it quickly tends to pass. In the moments when we are together and my instincts are calm, I do like the contact. Being able to touch her with my soul is the best part by far. Unfortunately, it's one of those things we can't do in public because it might put her on the radar of a metamancer, and apparently the spell is fairly draining, so Penelope has limits on how long she can keep it up perpetually anyway. She doesn't want to make our relationship too obvious in public either, as that's the kind of information that would quickly get back to her fiancé and cause her trouble. Not exactly, but 7 feet is close enough, I tell her. You're worried about mobility. I am indeed, Penelope nods. Sky and Capita both have knowledge of your soul kill ability. In an even, open fight they're likely to defeat you, even if you have the capacity to kill them instantly, simply because Sky can remain outside your range and attack from a distance. And Capita can teleport, as well as attack from a distance with her chaos magic, I finish. Yeah, it's a problem. We are of course using a silence bubble to speak, but for the first time I'm actually the one casting it rather than Penelope. Kinemancy is a bit confusing, some parts of it feeling natural and other parts utterly alien to me. I like illusions, specifically producing sound and light from nothing but magical energy, but any spells that require me to modify energy already in the world don't come as easily. The silence spell is one of those, but due to its obvious utility I've put in the work to learn it anyway. If you could cast invisibility, we might be able to ambush them, Penelope considers out loud. Hey, don't say that like it's easy, I grumble. That spell is crazy complicated. I can't just stop all light the way the silence bubble stops all sound, because that would just be a darkness sphere. I can't wrap my head around invisibility at all. Actually, a darkness sphere might not be a bad idea, Penelope muses. You could see anyway with your true eye, while everyone else would be blinded. That's also surprisingly difficult, I grunt. Just destroying light in an area is pretty difficult, which is to say you can't do it all. You have to let something absorb the light, I guess. But that's really difficult without physical stuff, and magic can't make matter, or at least kinemancy certainly can't. I guess hypothetically you could make a dome that reflected all the light trying to go inside it, but people could just light a match while in it to get around that. You'd need to make a spell that individually blocks every source of light within a certain area, or something. At least, that's my understanding. Interesting. I know a few kinemancy spells, but I just have the structure memorized, none of the theory. That does match with my limited knowledge, though. In that case, could you create a spell that pseudo-randomly redirects all light within its area? It wouldn't make darkness, but it should make all the light within utterly unintelligible. It would be just as blinding, but would not require any direct elimination or conversion of the energy. I consider. Yeah, that definitely sounds like it could work, but I might not have the raw strength to give it a big enough area to be worthwhile, plus I'm nowhere near good enough at kinemancy to start inventing my own spells. But I will definitely talk to Rowan about it. Penelope and I find somewhere to sit down, a table at some sort of plaza filled primarily with food stalls and wasteful, tasteless decorations. She hands me the fried pastry thing that still only has one bite taken out of it, and I eagerly wolf it down while she goes to buy something else, handing me half of that too. She tends to buy me a lot of food on these kinda dates, which is clearly more proof that she truly loves and understands me. Although, since I'm trying to be a bit more introspective, it doesn't escape my notice that the instincts which encourage me to feel affection for people that feed me are likely the same as the ones which cause me to despise contact and be slow to trust. I've been wondering lately whether the degree to which I don't seem to think like anyone else is because of my upbringing, my quote-unquote talent, which, even if I'm fairly certain is an inaccurate description, is at least a succinct way to say, all of the weird and crazy inhuman aspects that I'm capable of performing exclusively due to the nature of my soul, or because of something on my human side. It's probably not the way I grew up, considering the sheer depth and breadth of kids in exactly the same situation. A lot of my siblings, and it's weird to think of them like that and mean it without reservation, seem pretty normal compared to me. Maybe that's because they've spent more of their lives with Lynn, but Lynn was also just like me, at least until she got her talent. Rowan has likewise been a street con for pretty much his whole life, and while that's certainly a step or two up from a beggar, the steps are not very large. So it's probably something in my human half or my soul half that makes me like this. That's how I've started thinking about myself lately. Two halves. It's not a pleasant way to define myself, since one of these halves is something I hate, but Penelope is right in that I still need to acknowledge it. My soul certainly seems to be a lot more independent than the average soul, uniquely capable of action independent from my body. But the link is still there. I can't keep my soul awake while my body sleeps, I can't survive without physical food no matter how many souls I eat, and I can't fully ignore the impulses of my flesh no matter how heavily I try to disassociate from them. And, of course, I can feel that if the core of my soul leaves my body, I will die. Perhaps it will not be a complete death, but I already know what happens to souls outside of bodies, and I have no reason to assume that the Mistwatcher will make an exception for me. If I die and my soul becomes inert like everyone else's does, well, that's the end. Of course, it's also plausible that I could somehow act independently without a body, but I'm not really keen on testing that considering I have no method of doing so which wouldn't risk being exceptionally permanent. Lost in your own head a little? Penelope asks, taking a bite of the unidentified meat product she bought and apparently finding it much more palatable. Yeah, I confirm. I can't let you do all of the thinking for me, can I? She chuckles at that, politely covering her mouth since it's still full of food. After swallowing, she continues. Well, on that note, I actually think I have a solution to your range problem, Penelope says smugly. In short, we should be able to force a fight underground. Underground? I mutter, considering that. You mean like, the sewers? How would we lure them down there? And can't Sky just smash his way through the ceiling? Not the sewers, Penelope clarifies. Even further below that. Far further. The sewers are too close to the surface near the center city area to hide the amount of metal we must assume Sky possesses. There are only two things he could reasonably be doing with everything your mother claims to have stolen for him. The first would be some kind of magical super weapon, designs for many of which exist but only in theory, since the amount of metal required to make them would most likely trigger a perception event. The second possibility, and the one I think is most likely, unfortunately, is that he may be purposefully attempting to trigger a perception event. I respond eloquently. That seems bad. Penelope shrugs. It's functionally the same outcome as a super weapon, he'll just have minimal control over it. If he wants to ensure the death of the king, however, the only real control he needs is timing and general location. Given the resources at his disposal, I suspect he has set up a containment room underneath the castle, and he's moving the pieces in it one at a time. They can't move everything at once, because that would require all the metal to be together in transit, which would just unleash the perception event early. So he is likely delivering the disparate metal he owns to Capita, who then teleports it bit by bit into the storage room dug underneath the castle whenever the king is home. If and when the perception event occurs, it will completely annihilate the castle and a significant percentage of the center city around it, which will almost certainly kill not only the king but the vast majority of our government. How can you be sure that this is the plan they're going for? I ask. It seems awfully specific. Sure. Penelope shrugs. I can't be, of course. But it's not as though I've been meeting with the man every other day for tea and biscuits. My biomancy work is interesting, and I do think it's starting to endear me to him a little, but ultimately I'm there to get close to him and learn how he thinks. He's angry. He's fatalistic. He sees the world in black and white. A complete purge of the center city would absolutely fit his modus operandi as I understand it, and were I in his shoes, possessing his resources, that is how I would accomplish it. Well, shit. How has that biomancy work been going, by the way? I'm honestly surprised you two are still going at it, considering how much you hate each other. I never hated him, really, Penelope shrugs. Although I certainly didn't like him, and still don't. I understand him, however, and that lends itself to a certain sort of empathy. Likewise, I believe he is starting to realize that he relies on me now. I have been making strides towards his requests, although there have been amusing mishaps. I tried taking a purely hormonal approach to helping him grow a beard, but all it did was make his buttocks hairy instead. I snort. That's hilarious, I say. Why not just build him a beard? I'm pretty sure you got rid of a bunch of my body hair, didn't you? Could you do the reverse? Penelope smirks. I'm honestly impressed you noticed, she jokes. The short answer is yes, I can and ultimately did do that, but the process involves individually encouraging the creation of each hair follicle. As I'm sure you may imagine, that is a bit of a boring and arduous process, so I had hoped to take a shortcut. Alas, art requires work. Wow, so he's going to have a beard when we show up to kill him? That might be weird if I actually remembered much of what he looked like. Penelope halts right before taking another bite of food, taken by another minor fit of laughter. I love how you can show genuine interest in his progress and discuss his casual demise in the same breath, as if one will not cancel the other. Why would that cancel anything? I ask, tilting my head. I'm interested in the work because you're the one doing it, not because I care about him. You like to talk nerdy. She smiles slightly at that, taking a large bite of food and failing to hide how my words make her face flush with happiness. I like eliciting these reactions from her, chipping at her mask. I should tease her more often. Gee, good afternoon, ladies, the guardsman stutters. In terms of people employed with the understanding that their job will likely encompass some amount of kicking the shit out of things, city guards tend to be on the low end of the power spectrum. Hypothetically, they are strong enough to deal with the average criminal, but anyone with a better talent or just more skill in general would end up in the military, the Templars, or maybe as a hunter. Still, part of being city guard is threat assessment, so almost all of them have some form of rudimentary danger sense. Which is all an overcomplicated way of saying, damn, it's nice to be scary. I like seeing people in uniform scared, rather than everyone else. I try to remember the sort of facial expression that would be appropriate for this situation, and settle on a feral grin. How can we help you, guardsman? Penelope asks pleasantly. One of the, stall owners has asked me to ask you to relocate on the grounds that you are bothering his customers. The guard manages to get out. He keeps staring at me, and I happily stare back. My eyes are getting dry, but it's easy enough to ignore. He squirms. This is fun. We are paying customers ourselves, and we have kept to ourselves, being neither rowdy nor boisterous, Penelope answers smoothly. Plus, I'm only bothering one customer, I correct. Not customers. Plural. Penelope gives me a glare, but it's half-hearted at best. Vita, she chides. What? I say. It's not my fault, I haven't done anything but exist. That guy has been freaking out about us since we sat down, though. Without turning to look, I point at the man I'm referring to, the only other person in the plaza with a danger sense. With a startled jump, he turns away, and my grin grows a little wider. Vita, don't antagonize the man, Penelope presses, although I can tell she's almost as amused as I am. Guardsman, as I'm sure you know, a person has no influence over how others perceive them using trained or natural abilities. It is not legal for you to request her departure under these grounds, because if it were you could arbitrarily request our departure from any public space regardless of what we were doing. It would be funny if he tries to get us to leave anyway, though, I point out. Vita, Penelope chides again, though I see her lips twitch upward. The guard clears his throat. Well actually, while this area connects to government property, it is actually a privately owned space, under the joint ownership of. I stop paying attention to the conversation, because something interesting suddenly pings my extra senses. A soul I don't recognize, large enough to immediately draw my attention. It feels like it's searching, and when it senses me it falls victim to the mortal terror anyone with a danger sense does, but rather than flee or panic it starts making a beeline towards me without hesitation. Mana fills it, a learned spell is cast, and whatever that spell is seems to affect the caster's soul. It's all right, I suddenly say, cutting off the guardsman. We're leaving. I shoot Penelope a meaningful glance and she immediately nods. The two of us get up and I head towards the nearest alleyway, intent on losing whoever is tailing us. Penelope casts another privacy spell, which I'm thankful for because I don't have the focus to spare on doing it myself. I'm pretty sure I just felt an inquisitor, I tell her as soon as she finishes. Shit, Penelope swears. Well, let's lose them. How certain are you that it was an inquisitor? I don't know. 60%. Whoever they were, they had a strong enough soul to be a Templar, and I'm relatively certain they cast some kind of animancy on themselves. I frown, peering more intently at the changes done to their soul as I rapidly make distance between us. Maybe some kind of counter-animancy? A shield against soul tampering, made out of soul stuff? That's my guess. Would it stop you? Penelope asks. No. I could rip this person apart. You think we should lure them in, ambush them? Penelope taps her chin in thought. No, she eventually concludes. We're too close to the lab. Just lose them, if you can. I nod, scooping up Penelope in a Princess Carry and breaking into a run. She wraps her arms around my neck, sighing contentedly as she rests her head against mine. You knew that I was going to pick you up if you told me to lose them, I realize. She grins. It may have factored into my decision-making a little, she admits. I suppose I can't complain. We run for a while, losing the Inquisitor long before they ever see us. I continue carrying Penelope, though, just because I can. It's time to attack. After learning that Sky is most likely going to attempt to cause a perception event, we pulled out all the stops. The last 10 days has been nothing but plans, intelligence gathering, and preparation. Penelope bought about 3 dozen tracking dogs, which I then killed and put inside the bodies of rats. Risen are pretty much exactly as intelligent as they were in life, and we needed animals smart enough to follow relatively complex orders but small enough that nobody would pay them enough attention to figure out that they were dead. The dog-rat undead squad, with Vitamin acting as their coordinator and commander, was tasked with scouring the sewers to locate wherever it is that Capita teleports metal from, or failing that, any sort of organized collection of people or supplies underground. The fact that their mind helps a lot with communicating complex ideas, since my orders more or less transcend language barriers. We didn't have to retrain the dogs in order for them to understand exactly what I wanted. 2 days ago, we hit pay dirt, and found an artificial tunnel extending out from and far below the sewers where Sky's minions have made a base. We directed the whole dog-rat swarm down there, and soon enough they reported someone matching Capita's description, or at least someone matching the best description we could give a dog. A bit more stalking and we have our best guess on where she teleports the metal from. For our purposes, it's good enough. Anyway, once Capita is my revenant she can show us where the metal is and start reversing all the work she's done. Sky's plans will be ruined, the city will be saved, and we will be heroes that can't tell anyone that any of it ever happened without getting our asses absolutely fried by the uproar that would follow. Plus, we wouldn't get to keep all the metal. So here's the sewer map, and here's the tunnel map, Vitamin says, handing 2 sheets of paper over to me. They're about as to scale as I could make them, which isn't very but it should be good enough. Great job, Vitamin. I praise her, handing the papers off to Rowan and scooping her up into a huge hug. Damn, Vita, Lynn says. I wish I had a daughter this talented. How did you raise her so well? Memory cloning, I answer, giving her soul an annoyed poke. Also, rude. Remus did this kind of thing a lot for the Hunters Guild, Vitamin answers, shrugging as best she can while caught in my deadly cuddle grip. Oh yeah, Remus. I haven't seen the man that trained me to be a hunter since Lisha. What happened to him, anyway? I ask. Penelope says he got charged with gross negligence, Vitamin answers hesitantly. I think he's a slave for the army now or something. At least for the duration of the sentence. I try to hide my surprise, not actually expecting to have gotten an answer. I don't really think much about how Vitamin technically has all of Remus's memories. I suppose I can absolutely see her asking Penelope about it when I'm not around. In the way that Penta is me and Penelope, Vitamin is me and Remus, even if she had hardly any time to integrate with either of us. It's odd to think about, and I vaguely recall Vitamin calling Remus her dad when we first met, at which point I told her not to do that, which might explain why she's never talked about him with me around. If you want, I can see if there's some way we can go talk to him sometime, I tell her. I'm sure it would be kind of awkward, and we obviously can't tell him who you are, but... Yes please, Vitamin says quickly. I'd like that. Okay, we will. I promise her. Also, while we're at it, Vitamin starts, snuggling extra close to me, can I come with you guys? I promise I can help. No, Vitamin, I tell her firmly. This isn't the first time she's asked. You were a super big help coordinating the Risen for me, but it's too dangerous to bring you into a fight. If you get hurt, we can't heal you. You're not even bringing Penelope, Vitamin pouts. You won't be able to heal yourself either. Well, we don't plan to fight at all anyway. The fewer people with us, the better. Rowan will have his work cut out for him just keeping the 3 of us invisible. You know this. She nods glumly, leaving me surprised that she's put up so much resistance. It's not unprecedented for my revenants to argue with me, especially when they are trying to act in what they see as my best interest. It's still a bit weird, though. 90% of the time, they just snap to follow my orders. They do so, however, partially because my power explicitly compels them to, but largely because they're forced to consider me more important than anything else. It might even be possible for revenants to outright disobey me if they believe I'm working against my own best interest, which, well, I don't know how I feel about that. On one hand, it represents a lesser degree of control over them, which makes me uncomfortable. On the other hand, I'm fully aware that being uncomfortable that I have less control over sapient individual people is messed up, and emphasis on the fact that revenants are still indeed people is somewhat refreshing. With those thoughts out of the way, Lynn, Rowan, and I descend into the sewers from the secret exit in our house. Vitamin's map really is well drawn, and with Rowan focusing on making the 3 of us invisible and me on making us inaudible, we soon find the entrance to the tunnel system even further below the city than the sewers. I wonder how all of it was made. Given what I've seen of Sky's absolutely crazy talent, it's possible that he could just fly through the ground and carve through rock with nothing but pure kinetic force, but when I mentioned this theory Rowan pointed out that you can't just bore into the ground in any random direction and expect the resulting cave to be safe to travel in. Unless Sky happens to have experience as a professional miner or has a bunch of them in his gang, he probably didn't make any of this, merely found it. Ultimately though, the origin of these tunnels doesn't really matter. There aren't any torches or other things to see by, but that doesn't matter because Rowan can just create light, and using my soul sense we make sure that we don't run into anyone. It's slow going, but after about an hour of following Vitamin's map, I finally feel our target. Well, the good news is Capita is down here, I report. It doesn't really matter how much we talk, since the three of us are in my silence bubble. That's great. Lynn says. Let's shank her. What's the bad news? I feel Sky with her, I say. Something must have gone wrong with Penelope's half of things. Of course, since we're most of the way there already, if Penelope is in danger it's probably more expedient to just make Sky into a revenant and have him tell us where she is. Okay, I agree. Let's pick up the pace a little. We move into a brisk jog, Rowan grumbling a little but not outright objecting. About 5 minutes later, we're close enough that we slow back down, and shortly afterwards we finally see light other than our own. Rowan stops illuminating us and we descend into near-perfect invisibility, undetectable except by smell, taste, touch, danger senses, miscellaneous talent-based detection methods. Okay, too many things, really. Penelope, Margaret, and Theodora worked their asses off trying to figure out an animancy spell, because it would have to be an animancy spell, to render someone undetectable by danger senses, but they had no luck. The upshot is that the average person's danger sense is somewhere around 20 yards, if that, and I can feel whenever someone else senses me. Sky absolutely does not have a danger sense, not unless he's also somehow immune to the feeling of dread I inflict on people. Same for Capita. He does, however, likely have lots of people in his employ that are capable of the trick, and because my fear aura makes me distinct they will most likely warn him the moment they sense me. At that point, it's just a matter of whether or not I can get close enough before Sky notices. If it comes to a fight, well, Penelope and I prepared for this. I have a few tricks up my sleeve, even if I'm loath to use them. We creep forward, and the tunnel opens up into a cavern, about 200 feet from end to end in any direction. Many other tunnels connect to this room, some with doors but most just haphazardly placed around the perimeter, with people occasionally moving in and out. Most of the room seems to be a storage center, a hub of crates and barrels full of likely illegal goods that the roaming gang members are moving, counting, transporting. I don't know, gang stuff I guess. Sky and Capita are of course also here, chatting animatedly with each other. I see Capita giggle, placing a hand on each of Sky's cheeks and mushing his face around like a baby. He reacts with half-hearted protest, causing her to laugh harder before pulling him in for a hug. Sure enough, Sky does seem to be starting to grow a beard, though currently it's pretty light and patchy. Still, good for him. Too bad it will all be pointless when I murder him, since I'm just going to give him another man's body instead of trapping him back in his own. Hopefully that will mellow him out. That and the mind control, I mean. My musing comes to a stop when I get within about 5 feet of one of the two men standing to either side of the tunnel exit. I don't have any choice in the matter, the opening to the cavern isn't wide enough for us to get any further away. But of course, the man seems to have a weak and short-range danger sense, his soul reacting with terror immediately when I step inside his radius. Unfortunately for him, my tentacles are longer-ranged, and I have a shard prepared. In a single fluid motion, I kill him, stuff his soul with a piece of mine, and shove it back into place. He dies standing, body staggering only slightly as undeath claims him. He stands up straight again, overcome with confusion. His partner glances at him briefly, raising an eyebrow. From his perspective, it must have looked like the other man nodded off for a moment. "You good?" the living guard asks. I invisibly move towards my new revenant, getting him close enough to include him in my silence bubble. "You will act like everything's fine," I order him, then quickly step away. Everything's fine, my revenant repeats, giving his partner a thumbs up, and we continue into the room. Holy shit, Rowan whispers, even though no one else could hear us even if he shouted. I shudder, half with terror and half with pleasure. I didn't quite think that would work, and as tempted as I am to do it to the other guard, we would run the risk of him collapsing fully before my shard takes hold, which would cause a commotion we can't afford. Rowan has seen revenants made by me before, even lives with one, but only now does he really seem to realize the instantaneous and effortless control I constantly hold myself back from exerting en masse. Lynn is similarly chilled by the demonstration, although her reaction is mitigated by significant undercurrents of pride. From there, we have a relatively straight shot to Sky. The majority of the gang works around the perimeter of the cavern, leaving a wide open space in the middle between where we happen to enter and Sky's position closer to the far wall. Slinking as swiftly as we can, careful not to disturb rocks on the ground or step in puddles, we close the distance. It feels like things can't possibly be this easy. We are all waiting for the moment when things go wrong, when one of us makes a mistake, when something unexpected turns everything upside down. We aren't disappointed. Somewhere around the 50-yard mark, Sky casually glances in our direction, as if expecting to see something. He does a double take at the apparent nothingness before him, glancing around a bit before seeming to return to his conversation with Capita. I, of course, can feel his soul, so I grab Rowan and start leaping to the side immediately. In a single, swift motion, Sky points in our direction, rips a shard of rock out of the ground, and fires it at us with a deafening crack. I barely manage to get Rowan and I out of the way, but Lynn dodges the opposite direction and ends up outside Rowan's range for the invisibility spell, suddenly popping into view. Well, plan B, I guess. I leap away from Rowan, also becoming visible in order to take attention off of him. Lynn and I have a decent chance of dodging death by Sky, but Rowan does not. Thankfully, he knows his role is over, and quickly moves away, trying to get outside of whatever radius Sky can detect us in. Considering that he's a kineticist, my guess is that he has some sort of kinetic sense, but we were banking on it being as short-ranged as the rest of his powers seem to be. Well, short-ranged beyond the fact that he can just accelerate nearly anything into a deadly projectile. Hello, Vita. Capita greets me happily, waving fervently. Oh wow, she actually used my name. I dodge another lethal shot from her boyfriend, barely managing to throw my body away from the direction he's pointing before the attack comes out. How are you doing today? She shouts back, likely for no other reason than because I did. The question is weird enough to put me off balance a little, although thankfully I still manage to dodge Sky's next shot. You know we're here to kill you, right? I ask her. She gives me a pleasant smile, mana gathering around me where there will no doubt soon be a chaos magic implosion. I leap out of the way, and Lynn, substantially faster than even me, turns on Capita instantly, knife going for her throat. That's a poor reason not to greet family, Capita chides playfully, then teleports Lynn into the middle of the implosion.